Hey guys, this evening we are pulling back the gingham drapes and walking straight into a dimension of hot dish aspirations, spotless vinyl floors and, sufficient aerosol styling products to single-handedly densify the atmosphere, the hidden existence of the mid-century homemaker. Ignore whatever the television comedies and soap advertisements promised you. Tonight we are leaping through time to discover what truly transpired behind those starched pinafores. And believe me, it is weirder and more amusing than any suburban simulation you have ever cooked up in your head. Before you get too comfortable, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from. Or just admit your most shameful cleaning supply obsession. Only do that if you're actually having a good time here. Naturally, there is zero stress involved, just the subtle remaining aroma of furniture polish. Now I need you to lower those lamps, switch on a fan for that soft white noise, or if you want the real experience, place your device beside the tumble dryer and snuggle into a comfortable spot. Allow yourself to relax, because for the upcoming hour you are going to transform into the most diligent worker on your residential block. But let us hesitate for a moment. Have you ever asked yourself, did women in the 50s really spend the entire day cooking pastries? How many hours did they genuinely give to sweeping rugs versus avoiding their neighbours? Unwanted gelatin salads? Did plastic container sales parties actually get rowdy? Was there a covert underground trade for canned fruit slices? Were body shapers actually the medieval punishment tools of the post-war neighbourhoods? Could you last 60 minutes in a home where every single countertop is meant for company and definitely not for handling? How did anybody manage to grin that widely while scouring a porcelain tub with abrasive powder? And what exactly was inside that baked dish? Seriously? Good job. You have just opened your eyes in 1954. The positive news is that you are the monarch of your own residential empire. The negative news is that the empire requires a complete turkey dinner, perfectly folded bed linens, and absolutely zero detectable dirt. Welcome to a standard day in the reality of a mid-50s homemaker. Push up those sleeves. There is a massive amount of relaxation to survive. It is 6 in the morning and your wake-up call is not a digital device but an overly enthusiastic bird sound coming from the AM broadcast. You leap out of the sheets. Well, you attempt to, with the reflexes of a person who has memorized every squeak in the wood flooring and understands that the morning meal has a strict dress code. The very first detail you register is that the home is freezing. Not just adjust the dial chilly, but sprint and snatch your dressing gown before the tiles bite your feet chilly. Your feet hit the ground with army-level accuracy. Because in the kingdom of the neighbourhood, the initial foot on the floor secures the warm water. The radio shouting a happy tune and a bright voice telling you to begin your day the nuclear way is your dawn drill instructor. The advertisements guarantee a tomorrow filled with airborne automobiles. But right this second, your near future is a contest against the coffee machine's obstinate bubbling. You drag yourself to the washroom, executing a choreographed regimen right out of a political standoff dance routine involving scrubbing, rinsing, setting curls and forcing eyebrows into an arch of pure hope. The looking glass is brutal. It shows back not just your pillow-crushed waves, but the very concrete understanding that in this decade, exiting your sleeping quarters without a socially acceptable face is viewed as a felony against both the almighty and the cookbook authors. So you assault your hair with curlers and spray, prepared to mist up half the district and personally power the race to the moon. Lip colour in one specific hue. Sunrise crimson. Because this is an era with precisely 3 permissible mouth shades and every single one of them marks ceramic mugs until the end of eternity. Before you have even managed your initial taste of Java, there is a to-do list opening up in your brain like a punch card from the administration. Food must be on the wood in 23 minutes. Offspring must be clothed, molars must be scrubbed, and somebody, likely you, needs to recall where the footwear travelled to during the dark hours. You are operating with a productivity that would embarrass any contemporary office supervisor, handling skillets and timelines with an exactness that is equal parts dance recital and combat zone, and always, constantly with a grin. Because that is the unspoken statute of the territory. You drift through the dawn mist in a residence that demands structure. There are unseen benchmarks at work. The surfaces should sparkle. The family room should appear ready for visitors by 7. And God help you if a neighbour sees untidy bedding. Every single motion is scripted for the highest output and the lowest amount of disorder. The morning meal dress code isn't strictly for the little ones. It is for you as well. There is no shuffling to the dinette in lounge pants. This is the golden epoch of appearing orderly, even if you feel like a chemistry experiment maintained by hair clips and optimism. And subsequently arrives the noise. A symphony of entryways banging, kids rolling down the corridor, and the unavoidable smash that indicates somebody's grain bowl has met a tragic finale. You float. Or, let us be truthful, power walk into the galley, releasing a tower of hotcakes and a strategic reserve of cured pork. It is a show, and you are acting as both the filmmaker and the protagonist, ensuring everybody gets nourished, clothed and outside with the correct midday meal. And preferably, the correct kid. As your husband walks in, sharp blazer, newly ironed, you present the beverage with a smirk that is mostly stimulants and partially false confidence. There is a second right here where the dwelling feels like a counting timer, everybody and everything moving. A concert of post-conflict hope and held-back life anxiety, perhaps. You peek at the front page. Global tensions, modern gadgets, the rare alien report. You ask yourself quickly if anybody in those sky cars they keep vowing will ever create a device that organises hosiery or constructs a breakfast that does not demand half a dozen skillets. By the moment the final jacket is fastened and the main entry shuts tight, the home goes back to quiet. You inhale. You made it through the initial skirmish of the date. The radioactive alarm is finished, but the remainder of your endurance run is only starting. Your locks are fixed, your smock is crisp, and the singular thing genuinely guaranteed is that by the time the light fades, you will have done this ceremony again, down to the final energized specific. Welcome to the 50s, where even getting up feels a tiny bit like getting ready for a rocket launch. Before you even spot the coffee pot, you fight yourself into a shaper, an achievement needing torso power, expert respiratory skills, and a solid refusal of circulation to the bottom extremities. Ease is optional. Community survival is required. The initial hurdle of the morning isn't food, it is civil engineering. The mid-century undergarment is not clothing so much as it is a construction declaration, built to keep you contained in the manner a metal overpass restrains a specifically hopeful stream. There is a cause these items are named foundations. You remain there staring at the device, attempting to recall which direction is north, which faces the front, and which side will eventually smash your fantasies of inhaling continually. Forget Pilates. If you can maneuver this object over your pelvis without snapping a tendon, you have basically reached nirvana. You commence the operation one limb at a time, like a climber getting ready for a lone hike up a peak, but with reduced air and increased rubber. Shapers were sold as helpful, but that is like describing quicksand as snug. You clutch the rubber with focus, twist, shake, and enact what could only be detailed as a hybrid between a precipitation ritual and a captive bargaining session. There is a short, slick second where you fret it might just claim this victory and you will actually need to telephone for assistance. But you push forward, whispering motivation to yourself and perhaps to the guardian angel of manufactured latex. As you finally click the fasteners into position, there is a silent win. A tiny personal triumph. You are now being kept intact by chemistry, business, and the silent social agreement of the subdivision. And you are not solitary. Somewhere across the city, a dozen other ladies are all involved in the identical dawn wrestling event, clenching their jaws and hoping. Nobody creates yoga trousers for another 5 decades. Contemporary spandex asserts it is smooth and easy. In the 50s, the only thing seamless was your determination. Once established, the shaper performs its sorcery, instantly changing your form from exhaustion to mid-century hourglass. The outline is legendary: smooth belly, tightened middle, hips just noticeable enough to imply family potential without menacing the male leadership. Your garments, chosen beforehand for the highest rigidity, now glide on like you are the lead in a soap powder advertisement. But the trick arrives with a cost. The type of inner squeezing usually kept for underwater vessels and space travelers. Taking a seat, sure, if you wish. Curving at a sharp angle and praying nothing breaks. Inhaling only as much as the scenario demands. Now arrives the tactical plotting. Every motion for the remainder of the sunlight hours will be cautiously planned to evade clothing failure and stop your insides from trying a jailbreak. You gain a psychic ability for short chairs, steps and offspring zooming in at high velocity. Entering the automobile demands a trick known only to 50s homemakers and acrobats. You curve, you slide, you pray nobody can detect the quiet squeak of rubber under pressure. Why do you engage in it? Because you are required to. The risks are elevated. You reside in a time where being organised is not a choice, but a non-negotiable community demand. One bumpy profile, and it is murmured about at the salon for a month. Homemakers do not perspire, they radiate. But if anybody ever radiated intensely enough to dissolve a plastic cloth, it is someone sporting a shaper in high summer. As the hours unroll, you gain a cautious admiration for this engineering wonder. Yes, it is tyrannical. Yes, it is painful. But in a weird fashion, it is also a shield. A genuine wall against the critical gazes of the lady next door and the deep fear that you might eventually be dishevelled. You even begin to adopt a sort of dignity in your capacity to operate under compression. A compression calculated not in air metrics, but in the stubborn fix of your chin and the meticulous curve of your brow. When dusk finally arrives and you strip yourself out of the shaper carefully, respectfully, as if disarming a dangerous explosive, there is an instant flood of ease, circulation and optimism. For a short, magnificent second, you can shift, inhale, and recall what it feels like to be an unconstrained creature, but you understand internally you will perform it all once more, the next day. In the 50s, ease is temporary, but a sleek profile is eternal. You slide, limp into the galley, focused on providing a robust national breakfast. Hen fruit, cured meat, griddle cakes. Because evidently arterial blockage is for the frail, and so is limiting intake. The cookhouse at this time is less a family sanctuary and more a food combat zone. The beverage bubbler wheezes and gurgles on the top like a train powered by the fantasies of exhausted ladies everywhere. The icebox vibrates with a scarcely hidden feeling of fear, understanding that you are about to loot it of every shell, strip of meat and questionable jar of preserves it holds. The light is barely visible, but your labour is already defined for you. In the 50s, the first meal is not a secondary thought. It is the commencing ceremony, a showcase of home ability and parental dedication. Even the canine is observing to verify if you will scorch the bread again. You commence breaking shells into a pan with one hand while turning cakes with the alternate. The flipper is your rod, the hot pads your gloves, meat crackles, bread jumps. And somewhere far off you detect the audio of kids fighting over whose turn it is to occupy the spot closest to the singular seat that does not shake. You have to be quick. The clock is everything. If you abandon the yolks for 10 seconds too long, they become tire rubber. If you abandon the meat for 5 seconds too little, you are providing a health hazard. It is a food waltz with very few living participants, and all the time you must appear peaceful. Nobody desires to witness alarm in the eyes of the lady holding the skillet. Homemaker journals suggest that a relaxed grin is as necessary as a warm dish. So you glue on your television mom look even as you silently calculate how many cloths you will require to clean up sugar sauce. Afterward, the broadcast buzzes in the rear, providing happy updates about fresh automobiles, atom experiments, and the undefeated values of the current domestic residents. You agree silently as if the phrases alone might prompt the dough to lift. By the moment the household walks in, the room has changed. The board is arranged with army accuracy, fruit drink cups perfectly straight, dairy spread on a tiny dish with a blade, never a scoop, never your digit, and a pile of cakes high enough to fill a tree cutter or an adolescent male. Your offspring slide into their spots, still in their sleepwear, locks aiming in several ways at once. Your partner sits down with the vibe of a guy who has never and will never ponder how a pancake occurs. The house pet hides underneath, practicing its hungry stray expression. Naturally, no meal would be finished without small turmoil. Somebody drops liquid, someone else begins a battle over meat distribution, and someone, usually the smallest, declares that they now detest eggs, all eggs forever. You manage these grievances with the calculated tact of a global truce broker. If a cake drops on the linoleum, you present another with a smirk that implies, "This is okay. This is standard. Please do not telephone the authorities." Between chews and arguing, you maintain one ear angled for indications of rebellion. Is the sauce too thin? Is the bread too burnt? Was it the correct variety of preserve? The response, naturally, is never a loud affirmative. But in the 50s, eating isn't about individual happiness. It is about a display of home strength, a daily promise that the national fantasy begins right here on a plastic floor sprinkled with flour and optimism. The dining, like all decent fights, finishes rapidly. Dishes are removed, the surface wiped, and suddenly you are encircled by a storm of laces, bags and gripes about education. As your soldiers walk out the entry, you review the landscape. Debris on the ground, meat oil on the range, and a mysterious streak of nuts spread on the drapes. You take a gasp, grab the mug and understand you will fight this skirmish again tomorrow, equipped with nothing but positivity, a flipper and the shatterproof will of the mid-century domestic goddess. Now it is time to rouse, herd, and somehow display your offspring for class. Every unruly hair is a foe. Every odd stocking a possible scandal. Somewhere in this mess, a food tin will disappear and it will be your error. There is a distinct craft to waking 50s kids. It is less like parting drapes on a stage play, and more like attempting to wake wintering animals with only a grin, a soft tone, and the danger of zero sweets. You begin with the eldest, who has mastered the I am still unconscious act to award levels. The smaller ones are already halfway out of their sleep clothes and into a hand battle over who secures the grain box reward. Your parental power is tried before daybreak. You recognise the routine. Every scalp must be combed, every molar checked, every blouse tucked with soldierly exactness. You handle the brush like a symphony stick, striking stubborn tufts with a mix of moisture, resolve, and the dim recollection of what it was like to possess private hours. There is constantly one kid who asserts their hose-airy prickles, another who has misplaced one sneaker. Not both, never both, and at least one who promises today is Wild Headwear Day, despite all proof to the opposite. You prepare garments with the tactical mapping of a space shot. Button-downs, folded bottoms, straps, all must be mark-free and newly pressed. Creases are not just a wash problem. They are a statement on your rearing, your morals, and possibly the steadiness of the Western world. There is no such item as adequate. In the 50s, kids are expected to depart the residence appearing like miniature delegates for the household name. Food boxes are the subsequent hurdle. You arrange bread slices, produce, and perhaps a biscuit. Never two. Control is vital. The slices are meticulously severed, edges optional. Depending on the stage of the moon or the prior school gathering, you insert a happy script, wishing it will outlast the brawl of the recreation area. Unavoidably, somebody cannot locate their tin, even if it is literally in their grasp. This is where your mental powers come in useful. You are expected to understand where everything is at all moments, even items that do not exist in the physical realm. Next, it is time for the footwear gathering. This entails creeping under frames, digging through jacket mounds, and providing quiet pleas to the home deities of misplaced objects. You discover sneakers in the wash behind the sofa, occasionally inside a grain package. Do not inquire. Identical stockings are a fantasy never quite reached, but you fake it with sufficient belief that nobody observes, except perhaps the lady next door, who maintains a book of your washing crimes. And then the concluding review. You arrange the kids, flattening necks and inspecting visages for rogue paste, meal debris, or mysterious marks. The benchmarks are elevated, every face washed, every nose cleaned, locks shining with the joint attempts of gel and parental panic. You direct them to the washroom for one final look, where they succeed to pull out everything you just secured and somehow come out with a fresh spot. This is the second when you ask yourself if the old philosophers created the idea of pointlessness. After viewing their offspring cloth themselves as the watch ticks toward the holy second of leaving, there is constantly a panic over forgotten approval forms, missing gloves, or a crisis. I require to construct a model of the entire territorial acquisition. By 8 you resolve it all, equipped with adhesive, creativity, and a questionably huge assortment of shoe tools. Finally, the transport comes, beeping with the nuance of an atomic rehearsal. You guide your kids out the entry, fixing a neck here, pushing a paper there, and giving pecks that they brush off as soon as you rotate your spine. The disorder lowers. The residence grows quiet for one magnificent second. You remain in the entry, winning commander of the residential morning war zone. The mission is finished until 3 o'clock, and when your neighbour signals from her deck, you signal back, both of you holding the private understanding that nobody ever truly has it organised. But in this subdivision, it is the attempt and the urgent spot cleaner that matters. Your partner is next, needing, by rule of the universe, a flat outfit, a leather case and bread cut on the slant. You must grin helpfully even if your cosmetic brush just poked you in the vision. There is a unique dance to firing a 50s husband into the globe, and it is somewhere between preparing a space traveller for launch and building a very fragile egg dish. You recognise the pattern by memory. His boots must be buffed to a grade that could dazzle driving car owners, his neckwear looped flawlessly, and his beverage dispensed exactly right. Never too searing, never too chill, and always somehow the identical strange hue of corporate brown. You commence with the outfit, which has been smoothed within an inch of its synthetic mix existence. One rogue crease and the organic order fails. You assist him into the coat, checking stitches and pads as if you are readying him for a picture with the leader, or at least with the folks next door. A fast sweep of the fuzz remover, a final second verify for loose bits, because nothing spoils a dawn quite like last evening's casserole sticking to a collar. The chest cloth must correspond, the wrist fasteners must sparkle, and the scent should be noticeable but not hostile. You exist in fear of him smelling too intriguing before 9. The meal is a vital stage. There is no such thing as snatch a grain bar on your path out. This is a time where eating is not only the most significant plate of the date, but also a hushed vote on your skill as a spouse. You showcase eggs with soldierly focus, dispense nectar with a firm grip, and organise the bread always on the slant, because apparently squares are for radicals. There is a craft to steadying his food disk, so it looks plentiful, but not greedy. And essentially, nothing contacts anything else. While he chews, you participate in civil, helpful dialogue. Nothing too deep. The market numbers, the climate, perhaps a soft nudge that the vehicle requires a grease swap. Your pitch must be calming and light, even if you have just found the hound has consumed somebody's past assignment and there is a lump of paint menacing to take up lasting housing on your lid. Gripes are not part of the selection. You are a fan, a clerk, and a disaster supervisor all wrapped into one. As the timer ticks down to leaving, the pattern accelerates. You give him his case, a flawlessly stuffed dark container of National Drive. You have by now learned its insides: quills, small pad, strange folders, and likely a meat sandwich covered with more attention than most global deliveries. His headwear is waiting by the exit, edge cleaned and poised for duty. You retrieve his jacket and rain guard in case of shower or light mist or a tiny odds of greyness, and remind him where he placed his auto-openers. Even though he has gazed in the identical place 4 times, there is always a concluding scramble. Maybe a fastener comes free. Maybe the athletic pages have gone missing. Maybe he has lost the one document he actually requires. You answer with the cool productivity of a lab worker, repairing what needs to be repaired, locating what needs to be located, all while keeping one eye on the watch and the other on your fast-chilling Java. And then, at last, the main gate opens. You send him away with a beam, a peck on the face, open shows of love just enough to be sweet, never shocking, and a soft caution to steer safely. He strolls out, a column of residential firmness prepared to master the globe, or at least the stationery cupboard. You observe him depart, taking a tiny, private joy in the wisdom that if anybody inquires how he handles it all, the solution is remaining in the galley, quietly fighting with a cosmetic tool and the bread bits he abandoned. As the gate shuts, you sigh, readying yourself for the hours ahead. You have fired your spouse into the sky, sharp, energized, and correctly adorned. Now at last you can seize a second to inhale, to complete your drink, and to wonder at the reality that before 8 you have already enacted 3 wonders and a small deed of food politics. Welcome to the elegant, unseen engine behind every thriving 50s male. One very conscious, very skilled homemaker. Food removed. It is onto plates, but do not just scrub. You must make the tops shine so intensely that the folks next door can view their image and doubt their own existence paths. Welcome to the after-eating exercise, also known as galley gymnastics. A total frame, high-power pattern involving bubbles, sinew memory, and the quiet verdict of every pretend caller who might at any second gaze through your glass and choke at a moisture mark. The fight isn't just against oil, it is against the crawling hunch that the lady next door really does visit just to inspect the gloss on your metal, rust-resistant steel. You begin with the saucers piled dangerously next to the basin, a statue to the large national meal and the mute law that every chewing session must create at least 3 times as many filthy dishes as there are humans attending. The liquid flows, searing, the cleaning foam lifts, and you put on your latex hands like a doctor about to enact a life-rescuing procedure on a skillet that will in all probability never truly be pure again. Every saucer is a small boss fight. Cake juice sticks to pottery with the stubbornness of a 50s lady to her lash brush. Yolk, abandoned for more than 30 seconds, cures into a glue tougher than any recorded rock. Pork oil. Oh. The pork oil taunts your attempts, gliding around the vessel in rebellion of the rules of gravity. You rub, you wash, you pile, all the while keeping a stance worthy of a periodical front. This is not just cleaning up. This is acting art. But plates are only the starting number. Once the final cup is wiped and stored, you shift your focus to the tops. In the universe of 50s neighborhoods, pure is never just not filthy. Pure implies every top must sparkle, like it was gifted by the machine deities themselves. You handle your pad and powder with the passion of a believer, working loops into the surface until it blinds anybody who is brave enough to gaze straight at it. If your tops cannot double as a looking glass for a sudden paint touch-up, you are not finished. And naturally, there is the basin. The sink acts as a stage for your highest aspirations and your deepest self-doubts, because nothing proclaims domestic perfection quite like a porcelain bowl so pristine it appears airbrushed. You attack every streak of water with a furious drive, polishing away every imperfection and finishing up with a cloud of lemon-scented spray. The fragrance drifts through the house, a message as primal as the ages, signaling that this spot is far cleaner than could ever be expected. Next, the floors. You sweep with quick, purposeful movements, banishing all the scattered crumbs into the waiting dustpan. The vinyl must be able to pass the sock test. No residue, no sticking, just a smooth, effortless glide and maybe a faint hint of floor wax, if you manage to find the time. You follow up with the mop, tracking down stubborn splatters like a private investigator on an especially vexing assignment. If a spot of orange juice has found shelter beneath the refrigerator, you will find it. Not today, citrus fiend. All of this domestic industry unfolds to the tune of a radio advertisement for kitchen cleaner that promises instant miracles. You idly muse about the sort of genuine miracle that would allow you to clean the entire residence with a single quick wave of a magic wand. But you persevere, energized by coffee and the quiet internal pressure to maintain the most immaculate home in the entire neighborhood. Periodically, you stop to observe your freshly cleaned territory. The kitchen gleams, the atmosphere energized by the scent of lemon and deserved pride. And for one perfect, fleeting moment, you almost accept the claims made in the commercials. A tidy house is a joyful house, or at least a house where you will not be plagued by the imagined presence of your mother-in-law unexpectedly arriving for a pop-in inspection. As you hang the dish towel with a finishing gesture, you permit yourself a brief feeling of accomplishment. The kitchen is prepared for its next challenge. Lunch, after-school snacks, a neighbour stopping by just to say hello, and then subtly inspecting your stovetop for dust. You have completed the kitchen workout, survived another round in the domestic arena, and your counters are now so flawless that if the Cold War intensifies, you could likely use the reflection off your sink to signal for assistance. You draw a deep breath, adjust your apron, and continue on. Because in the daily existence of a 1950s homemaker, the next challenge is always just around the bend, sometimes marked by a smear of jam and a suspiciously guileless smile. The clothing pile is neither fully animated nor completely inert. It simply exists. Like a household goddess, you sort, you steep, you scour, you twist, and you hang, ideally outdoors, where the light wind carries a faint aroma of cut grass, cigarettes, and deep existential unease. Every generation faces its own profound questions that have no easy answers. What is life's ultimate purpose? Why do we inhabit this world? And precisely how did so many single socks vanish between the laundry basket and the dresser? In the 1950s, laundering is less a simple obligation and more an epic undertaking, the kind of quest that creates legends and defeats less determined individuals. You stand facing the mountain of sheets, play clothes, and enigmatic handkerchiefs, the air heavy with the aroma of detergent and looming defeat. The washing machine offers its quiet drone in the corner, but let us be honest, it functions more as a symbolic participant than a genuine time-saver. The initial process is the separating, a solemn act that would stump even the most advanced supercomputer. White items, coloured items, delicate things, thick towels, and mysterious materials that defy classification must all be divided with the precision of a top-secret codebreaker. If one red sock is mistakenly mixed with the white load, you will suddenly find yourself explaining to the Parent-Teacher Association why your entire household appears dressed like peppermint sticks. You check the care instructions, debate the correct heat level for boiling away deep grass stains, and consider whether wrinkle-free fabric is a real phenomenon or just a pleasant suburban myth. Steeping is the subsequent step, and this is where genuine fortitude is essential. Persistent spots are not eradicated with a quick squirt of spray. They demand extended soaking, vigorous scrubbing, and if needed, calling upon the ancient powers of ammonia and sheer hard work. You attack grass stains as if you are personally getting revenge for every ruined picnic blanket, scouring with a solid bar of soap and the fierce resolve that comes only from knowing there is still another full hamper remaining. If the mark survives 3 distinct treatment rounds, you begin to respect it, perhaps even fear it slightly. You make a silent promise to never again serve beets or grape juice. Then comes the squeezing, the arm exercise that no one signed up for. If you possess a modern washing machine, it shakes and churns in a well-intentioned but ultimately feeble attempt to drain the water. If you do not, the entire job falls to you, your forearms, and a will made of steel. You twist, compress, and wrestle each piece of cloth, hoping the neighbours are not observing as you strain and groan your way through the enormous pile. Somewhere a manufacturing company is guaranteeing crease-free garments, and you suspect that is merely a fabrication started by someone who has never actually encountered a soggy pair of denim jeans. Hanging the laundry is an established skill in its own right. Outdoors is the ideal scenario. Clothes lines stretched across the back lawn, wooden pins clamped on with the tension of a long-held family secret. The wind snaps the sheets, the sunlight naturally fades the stains, and for one brief hour everything smells like optimism, and indeed the neighbour's cigarette brand. Indoors, during bad weather, it turns into a precarious balancing act involving drying racks, warm radiators, and the constant worry that your main living area will carry the scent of damp footwear forever. Folding arrives just as you consider abandoning it all for a different life path. Every single item must be crisp, sharply creased, and systematically arranged. Towels neatly stacked, socks matched as perfectly as the cosmos permits, shirts folded into geometric shapes that would impress origami masters. The children will completely undo your efforts within mere moments, but that is not the point. In the 1950s, an orderly linen cupboard is a badge of honour, proof that you are successfully managing the forces of domestic disorder. But here is the fundamental truth. Laundry is truly never complete. Even as you put away the last hand towel, you are aware that somewhere inside the house, another garment is becoming soiled, another sock is plotting its escape. You have survived another 24 hours, conquered the never-ending cycle, and for a few valuable moments, your family is dressed, pressed, and ready to face the world outside. You inhale the faint mixture of soap, cigarettes, and quiet satisfaction, and you keep moving. Because the next day the pile will reappear, as certain as the rising sun, as tenacious as hope itself. In the 1950s, laundry is a repetitive cycle, a rigorous test, and a necessary act of affection, performed again and again in the silent conflict against the unruly chaos of suburban existence. The rotary telephone begins to ring. It is likely your own mother, your nearby neighbour, or the parent-teacher association, each exchange demanding maximum politeness and a minimum of 2 phony, "Oh, I must quickly check the oven" escapes. In the domain of 1950s suburbia, the phone is more than simply an appliance. It is a social battleground, a private confessional booth, and a vital link to the outside world, all contained within one pale plastic casing. You never just answer the phone, you step into the competition. The long cord snakes across the kitchen floor, trapping you in a network of social duties and local news bulletins, typically concerning people you have never actually met but now feel deeply involved with, thanks to the information provided by Mrs. Jenkins 2 houses away. There is a specific skill to the phone greeting. You must sound cheerful, never rushed, never desperate, even if you are juggling a dripping plate in one hand and a baby in the other. "Hello," you reply, communicating both courtesy and plausible denial. If the caller is your mother, prepare for a dialogue heavy with unsolicited suggestions, thinly veiled criticisms of your latest potato salad recipe, and subtle interrogations about whether you have spoken to your cousin Lorraine recently. If it is the neighbour, you quickly shift gears to local reconnaissance. Who decided to paint their shutters red? Who failed to trim their lawn? And whose dog committed an offence where? Then, there is the Parent-Teacher Association, a formidable entity all its own. If you hear, "Hi, this is Marjorie from the fundraising committee," You know you are about to be recruited for yet another bake sale or asked to just quickly assemble a small centerpiece for the upcoming spring event. You manage a smile so expansive it can be heard over the phone connection and prepare your initial calculated move, the perfectly timed of an excuse. "Oh, I would truly enjoy discussing selling 200 cupcakes for the school fair, but my roast is just on the verge of burning. Can I call you right back?" This is secret language for "I need to muffle a scream into a pillow for 30 seconds before I agree to anything you suggest." You become a master of insignificant conversation, capable of enduring any verbal deluge. If the discussion is social, it is a gentle exchange of compliments and personal disclosures, punctuated with updates about shared acquaintances and the latest debate over who relocated the mailbox without telling anyone. You trade cooking ideas and local rumours, always being careful to sound supportive but never overly enthusiastic, in case you are dragged into the messy reality of an actual in-person visit. If someone utters the phrase, "stop by for a cup of coffee," you recognise you are dangerously close to being forced to host a mid-morning gathering. Phone calls in the 1950s are a public spectacle. Privacy is an illusion. The cord barely reaches around the nearest corner, so you have a forced audience. Children listening in, your spouse raising a skeptical eyebrow, the dog hoping it is the butcher calling with a delivery. Every single word must be carefully selected, every silence filled with just the right combination of excitement and believable tiredness. The wrong tone and you become the subject of the following week's gossip network, forever remembered as the person who sounded grumpy when I phoned at 8:45 on a Tuesday morning. Sometimes you attempt to terminate a conversation gracefully. "I should probably hang up now. There is laundry to do and the ironing board is calling my name." But true experts employ the dual excuse technique. You simultaneously check the roasting oven and suddenly recall a pot of coffee about to bubble over. By the moment you are finally released, you have agreed to participate in a bake sale, uncovered 3 new neighbourhood disputes, and learned that Mrs. Peterson's son is seeing a young woman with suspiciously bright blonde hair. But it is not only clever manoeuvring and vague evasions. The telephone also serves as a crucial connection, a source of real comfort, quick shared laughter, and genuine human connection. A phone call from a close friend can save you from a lonely afternoon or a moment of deep doubt about whether your children will ever willingly eat a vegetable. You hang up feeling slightly lighter, sometimes reminded that behind every closed front door on the street, someone else is managing casseroles, appointment books, and a deep-seated weariness. When the receiver finally clunks back into its base, you let out a silent sigh of relief. You have survived another round of the neighbourhood gossip Olympics, your reputation largely intact. And as you wipe the counter with one hand and quickly jot down a PTA reminder with the other, you cannot help but admire the minor miracle of the rotary phone, a piece of equipment capable of generating both general mayhem and authentic connection, one perfectly managed conversation at a time. Your Hoover vacuum is your trusty steed, your symbol of pride, and your only officially approved weapon against the relentless menace of dust bunnies. The carpet is simultaneously your blank canvas and your main arena of conflict. Operating a vacuum cleaner in the 1950s is not merely a task, it is a profound rite. The instant you plug in the Hoover, you transform into a champion armed with powerful suction, force, and moral superiority. Your enemy is the constant stream of small crumbs, shed hair, and the mysterious granular dirt that multiplies no matter how many times you instruct your family to clean their shoes. Magazines for homemakers claim the ideal residence should smell of citrus cleaner and look exactly like the setting for a detergent commercial, so you forge ahead, determined to eliminate every piece of evidence that human beings actually reside in this place. The vacuum itself is a massive machine built like a military vehicle, weighing as much as a medium-sized canine and making a sound like a jet engine preparing for ascent. There is nothing subtle about the act of vacuuming. The second you begin, it is a clear household declaration. I am performing my chores. Observe my dedication. Even the neighbours might stop their activities to wonder if you are simply moving furniture or getting ready for a space mission. You approach each room with precise military planning. The living room is the primary focus, a display area for the family and the first space any visitor encounters. You pull out the furniture, sometimes using the raw strength of an acrobat, revealing entire ancient cities of lost coins, petrified breakfast cereal, and the occasional plastic soldier who has been exiled. Each pass of the Hoover is a study in precise execution, slow, consistent, overlapping movements creating that signature, just vacuumed, striated texture. If you finish and the carpet pile is smooth, you take a moment of quiet self-satisfaction. You may never experience complete calm, but at least your floor does. Next, the narrow hallway challenge. Tight, heavily used, and strangely sticky. Here you maneuver around discarded footwear, book bags, and whatever the family dog dragged inside. The Hoover roars across the tiles, consuming dust and grudges with equal enthusiasm. Occasionally, you imagine you are piloting a small submarine through enemy waters, avoiding hidden explosives in the form of building blocks and stray toy marbles. Survival depends on sharp vision, a firm grasp, and an unwavering singleness of purpose. Bedrooms present more dangers. Beds are magnets for dust ruffles and missing socks, and the vacuum's lengthy electrical cord is just long enough to trap you in an internal dilemma. You bend, extend, and twist your body, muttering curses every time the plug suddenly rips free from the outlet. Extension cords are both a wonderful aid and a genuine hindrance. Yes, they allow you to reach the far corner, but now you represent a serious tripping risk while wearing your heels. You make a silent mental note to design a cordless vacuum, then sigh, realizing that that kind of technological magic is likely 30 years in the future. And one must not forget the deep satisfaction of the full vacuum bag. When it is completely packed, you have undeniable proof of your efforts. You take it out carefully, holding it up like a trophy, being careful not to let even a single dust particle escape. Replacing the bag is an exercise in hope and dexterity, requiring a combination of physical power, a small prayer, and occasionally a second pair of hands. And yes, you will absolutely have to vacuum up the mess created by changing the bag. Why endure all this demanding effort? Because in the 1950s, immaculate cleanliness is more than just a routine. It is a source of status and a social commodity. The neighbour who maintains the cleanest house is the quiet winner, respected and somewhat intimidating to all others. You vacuum for your good name, for your family's comfort, and for the hope that today possibly you will finish the job before someone drops a peanut butter sandwich face down onto the floor rug. When you finally turn off the Hoover, the entire house is changed. The air vibrates with clean energy and a sense of achievement. The carpet looks practically new. The room faintly smells of progress, and for one brief, brilliant moment, you have successfully held back the chaos. You hang up the power cord, step back, and admire the domain you control. The battle is far from over, but today, at least, you have won. Suddenly, it is the middle of the morning, and you are rushing off to attend a Tupperware party. It is less a gathering about food preservation and more about Cold War allegiances, thinly veiled competitive sales tactics, and staying current with Mrs. Miller's brand new avocado green set. Tupperware parties serve as the unofficial financial market of 1950s suburbia, a hidden marketplace where the true value lies in airtight plastic lids and the consequences are nothing less than total neighbourhood social dominance. These social events pretend to be light-hearted get-togethers, but do not be misled. Beneath the pleasant surface there is a fierce competitive spirit, sharper than any kitchen knife. The hosting woman greets you with a smile that is 2 parts welcoming and 1 part calculated strategy. She is motivated to sell products. You are motivated to socialise, but everyone understands the actual goal is to leave with your self-respect still intact, and perhaps a new butter dish container. You enter a home that smells of citrus furniture polish and quiet ambition. The living room has been perfectly arranged, doilies are perfectly aligned, cookies are placed on matching serving dishes, and every piece of Tupperware is so gleamingly polished it could function as a guide for aircraft flying overhead. You find your seat among the other women, all sitting carefully positioned on the edge of the sofa like a group of pastel-clad international envoys. Your handbag rests on your lap, your polite practice chuckle ready to be used. Let the performance begin. The Tupperware representative stands in the front, part commercial salesperson, part inspirational speaker, holding up her plastic merchandise with the authority of a military leader. She demonstrates each item with the kind of high regard typically reserved for royal treasures, sealing the lids with a satisfying pop that somehow fills the entire room with both optimism and a slight sense of underlying dread. "Just listen to that perfect seal," she announces, her eyes glowing with the intense passion of someone who has overcome 3 marriages and countless lux. You nod politely, as if you too have strong feelings about modular plastic freezer containers. Then the gentle sales pitch begins, which is not gentle at all. The hostess starts by explaining just how much simpler her life became after she discovered the amazing benefits of polyethylene. She offers a small wink. Someone in the back quietly mentions the old days of using wax paper and string, and the entire gathering shudders in shared revulsion. The implied message is clear. Adapt or face social isolation, becoming an outcast with stale snacks and a shameful inability to coordinate the colours in your kitchen pantry. Product samples are passed around the circle, each plastic container examined with the care of a rare artifact. You are expected to express amazement and admiration, to compress the sides and pop the tops, even if you are secretly thinking that your original glass jars work perfectly fine. There is inevitably at least one female guest, typically Mrs. Miller, who asks complex, challenging questions about how well they stack, safety when placed in the dishwasher, and whether the autumn yellow shade will coordinate with her living room drapes. She is both admired and slightly feared, for she has truly mastered the subtle skill of competitive domesticity. Soon, the order sheets appear, thinly disguised as simple small pieces of paper. This is the moment where social alliances are forged and social standings are established. You subtly glance at your friend's sheet, attempting to determine whether you can get away with just ordering a small mixing bowl, or if you are socially obligated to purchase the entire deluxe starter collection to avoid being the main topic of conversation for the next 6 months. The social pressure is very real, and the Tupperware lady senses your reluctance. She leans in closely, whispers about a special limited-time-only deal, and before you realise what is happening, you are circling 2 more drinking tumblers and a gelatin mould that you know you will never actually use. After the purchases are finalised, it is time for the refreshments. Coffee, a vaguely congealed salad, and local gossip are served in equal parts. The conversation shifts to who will host the next party, who is renovating their home, and the latest rumour involving the butcher's wife and the milkman's unfortunate facial hair. The atmosphere relaxes as everyone bonds over shared small victories and mutual complaints about spouses who cannot locate the dinner leftovers even when they are stored in a neon orange container clearly labelled meatloaf. When you finally depart, your order form firmly held in your hand, you feel both lighter and somewhat burdened. Lighter in terms of your cash, heavier in terms of future Tupperware obligations. Your kitchen will soon sparkle with new plastic treasures, and you will rest easy tonight, knowing you have successfully maintained your standing, at least for the moment, in the complicated, never-ending competition of suburban household life. Because in the 1950s, the Tupperware gathering is not just about the plastic containers, it is about keeping everything together, one perfectly burping lid at a time. You return to your home for a solitary meal, a small period of quiet, unless naturally your neighbour decides to stop by with a savoury casserole dish and a full verbal account of everyone else's marital struggles. The possibility of having a lunch alone in the 1950s is almost mythical in nature. You picture yourself seated peacefully at the kitchen table, a single column of sunlight streaming across the checkered floor as you slowly enjoy half of a ham sandwich, and the absolute quiet. It is a rare, small pocket of the day when you are not actively performing, not settling disputes, not vacuuming with manic intensity. Just you, your own thoughts, and the soft, constant hum of the kitchen refrigerator. This is the ultimate fantasy. Yet, solitude is fleeting in this environment. The entire universe, or at least your particular neighborhood, strongly resists a vacuum. There is always a sudden rap on the door, or worse, a friendly face peering through the window as you take your first mouthful. Mrs. Ferguson from the adjacent property, carrying a casserole dish with the kind of unwavering self-assurance reserved for top regional managers and Olympic athletes, is here to deliver this to you. You are about to receive both immediate sustenance and a complete spoken history of her daughter's new engagement ring, which may or may not be a cheap imitation diamond. You invite her inside. Your polite smile is frozen in place. Your fork is put down. Lunch for one immediately becomes lunch for two. Perhaps even three if Mrs. Ferguson's cousin just so happens to be in the immediate vicinity. The casserole itself is an unknown mixture, cream of canned mushroom soup, a hint of existential sadness, and something that might have originally been chopped celery. But you consume it gratefully, aware that declining a neighbour's generous offering is the social equivalent of intentionally setting your own mailbox on fire. As you slowly eat, the conversation unfolds in layers of revelation. You learn which marriages are currently holding strong. Well, they are still speaking to each other after that ridiculous wallpaper disagreement. Which ones are falling apart? She has started wearing slacks to the grocery store. Can you even believe it? And who is currently on probation with the Parent-Teacher Association. The local gossip flows as freely and as thick as the casserole, and you listen, smile, and occasionally nod at all the socially appropriate times. Your own personal opinions are kept safely private, sealed securely in plastic wrap and stored away for a less socially precarious time. If by some rare chance your neighbour does not materialise, lunch alone is its own unique experience. You search the refrigerator for various leftovers, constructing a meal from a piece of last night's meatloaf, half of a tomato, and 2 forgotten olives salvaged from the back of the shelf. There is no social media platform to publicly document your creation, only the quiet pride of ultimate resourcefulness. You sit down at the table with a magazine, perhaps Good Housekeeping or Ladies' Home Journal, and casually flip through elaborate recipes you will never actually try and fashion suggestions you will never follow. For a brief, flawless moment, the world feels completely still. But even when you are alone, the long list of tasks is still lurking nearby. There are school permission forms to sign, household bills to pay, notes to write for the upcoming bake sale, and the constant, daunting shadow of the ironing board. You eat with one hand and discreetly sort the laundry with the other. Perhaps you quickly take a sudden phone call. Yes, Marjorie, I will bring the punch bowl to the social event at the church. Even in supposed solitude, your time is truly never completely your own. The house hums with invisible demands, and the relentlessly ticking clock reminds you that this short intermission will end as soon as the school bell rings. Lunch in the 1950s is less a simple meal and more a quiet reflection on shared community, mutual obligations, and the strange comfort found in endless repetition. Whether it is spent in blessed silence or communal casserole consumption, it is a crucial chance to gather your strength before the afternoon's second phase begins. You clear your plate, carefully re-wrap the remaining leftovers, and take one last sip of cold, stale coffee. Outside, the neighbourhood is already becoming active. Lawnmowers are starting up, mail trucks are driving past, and the faint, distant sound of a child's laughter can be heard. You stand up from the table, whether you ate alone or with company, smoothing your skirt and correcting your posture, replenished by food, companionship, or just a moment's peaceful pause. Because in this reality, even a simple lunch is never truly just a simple meal. It is a necessary pit stop, a gossip exchange, a short relief, a required rite. You gather up the used dishes, check the clock again, and know that no matter how you spent it, you will look back on this 30-minute oasis as a small, daily miracle. By noon, you are cleaning things you have already cleaned, because the single greatest threat to your home's social reputation is the chance that someone might arrive without calling ahead and notice a single tiny mark on the glass mirror. There is a specific kind of 1950s nervousness that no modern high-tech security system could ever fully match. The persistent worry that your doorbell will suddenly ring and on the other side will be Mrs. Miller, notepad in hand, claiming to be just dropping by to deliver a recipe and then proceeding to perform a quiet forensic examination of your baseboards. This is why, even after an entire morning dedicated to vacuuming, polishing and mopping, you find yourself going back over the same ground, sponge in your hand, scrubbing the very surfaces you thought you had already mastered. It is an unending, repetitive cycle. The dust you painstakingly wiped from the mantel 2 hours ago has magically reappeared, as if it has joined a union and is now working in rotating shifts. You move from room to room, actively seeking fingerprints, water stains, or God forbid, one rogue, solitary crumb. Your eyesight becomes hyper-focused, trained to immediately spot imperfections that ordinary people would completely miss. A faint ring mark on the wooden coffee table, the vague outline of a smudge on the refrigerator, a decorative cushion that has dared to shift even 1 inch out of place. In this particular era, total perfection is not just a high goal, it is the absolute minimum standard. The hallway mirror quickly becomes your ultimate nemesis. You know with a kind of internal certainty that any visitor will look at it and instantly spot the single remaining streak. You refuse to accept it, so you spray, you polish, and you scrutinize from 5 distinct angles, checking your reflection for both external cleanliness and any signs of impending mental breakdown. When the glass finally meets your high standards, you permit yourself a quick nod of approval until a child's sticky fingerprint magically materializes 2 seconds later, as if summoned by ancient housewife incantations. Bathrooms receive a second thorough inspection. Towels are fluffed up, soap dishes are meticulously wiped, and you cast a critical eye over the toilet seat for any evidence of splashing or mischievous sibling vandalism. The guest hand towel is strictly reserved for guests, and you would rather claim bankruptcy than permit your own children to use it. For actual hand drying, the sink must be spotless, all toothpaste residue vanished, and the bath mat must be aligned with absolute precision. You stop for a moment to consider the immense effort versus the actual impact. Then you remember the time Mrs. Ferguson dropped by unexpectedly and spent 10 entire minutes closely examining your tile grout. The main living room is treated to a similar intense once-over. Cushions are plumped, magazines are fanned out with near-mathematical exactness, and every lampshade is angled at the scientifically determined most pleasing tilt. Coffee tables are wiped for the 3rd time, just to be absolutely certain. You carefully readjust picture frames, gently dust the small figurines, and rescue a loose penny from beneath the sofa, putting it in your pocket like a small medal. A quick look out the front window reveals a suspicious shadow. False alarm, it is only the mailman. But your heart still skips a beat regardless. If you have any spare time remaining, you attack the kitchen area. Counters are wiped down yet again, clean dishes are stacked with a Jenga-like precision, and the garbage can is discreetly tied up and hidden, lest anyone suspect you actually generate real refuse. The refrigerator door is given a final quick polish, because everyone knows unexpected visitors love to lean against it while sharing the latest news about their second cousin's gallbladder removal surgery. The floor receives a specific spot mop, and you check the fruit bowl one last time, rearranging the apples so the shiniest ones are displayed on top. Midday domestic maintenance is not really about the actual cleaning. It is about maintaining complete control over your immediate environment, your public image, and the quiet, unspoken scorecard of suburban excellence. You stop, physically tired, to sip your lukewarm coffee, observing your hard work for a brief moment. The house still stands as a shining monument to the strict rules of domesticity. You know perfectly well it cannot possibly last. Someone will inevitably rush in with wet, muddy shoes, a hidden dust bunny will emerge from its hiding place, and your nearby neighbour will, without a doubt, drop by. But for this moment, you have successfully defended your title. The house is perfectly clean, quite possibly cleaner than it was earlier at 8 a.m, and certainly cleaner than anyone would ever openly admit. You inhale deeply, smooth your hair, and move forward, because in this particular world, the word finished does not apply. There is only the state of being ready for inspection. At long last, you permit yourself a short break, a cup of instant coffee, and the day's installment of As the World Turns. For 22 whole minutes, you are transported to a fictional world where other people are dealing with intense drama, and your own sole responsibility is just a pile of laundry. This is the sacred ritual, a combination of earned reward and necessary coping strategy that sustains many a 1950s homemaker. You perch on the kitchen stool or sink into the sofa, coffee in hand, comfortable slippers on your feet, the faint, lingering scent of lemon furniture polish still clinging to your apron. The house is briefly, miraculously silent. The children have been sent outside to the yard or are away at school. Your spouse is safely working at the office, and the only audible sound is the low electronic drone of the television as it flickers to life. The theme song starts up, equally stirring and calming. For a short, invaluable period, your personal world shrinks to the screen's dimensions and simultaneously expands into someone else's troubles. The actors, who are glamorous, deeply troubled, and suspiciously well-dressed for people facing so many marital difficulties, become your secret, temporary companions. You slowly sip your coffee and allow yourself to be consumed by the heartbreaks and treacherous betrayals of fictional small-town residents whose biggest problem is whether they married the wrong physician, not whether there is bright grape jelly smeared on the clean curtains. There is a precise skill to this fleeting escape. You watch intently with one eye on the screen and one ear actively listening for the sound of the doorbell, fully prepared to jump up and immediately re-engage with reality should a neighbour suddenly appear or a child suddenly require a band-aid. It is the ultimate balancing act, keeping track of both the complicated soap opera storylines and the ongoing laundry cycle, both of which constantly threaten to spin completely out of control at any given moment. The phone might ring unexpectedly, the mailman might arrive, the dog might begin barking loudly. But for these 22 minutes, you remain fixed in place, a steadfast beacon in the emotional storm of daytime broadcasting. The story plots are delightfully outlandish, complete amnesia, secret identical twins, forbidden passion, and a never-ending series of awkward misunderstandings. No complex issue is ever resolved with a simple, direct conversation. Just like actual life, you observe, but with much heavier eyeliner and far fewer casseroles. You pass judgment, you gasp audibly, you offer silent counsel to the fictional characters who will never actually hear it. Do not trust him, Margot. He is lying about who he claims to be. You feel for one fleeting moment like you are participating in something huge, a collective of women all across America, each one clutching her mug and silently cheering for or actively rooting against the same unlucky lovers. Soap operas are not only a form of light entertainment, they represent a brief window into different possibilities, different mistakes, different successes. Perhaps you slightly envy their extensive wardrobes, their apparent lack of household chores, or their seeming immunity to common dust. Maybe you simply enjoy the reassurance of knowing that no matter how chaotic your own day becomes, none of your acquaintances have been abruptly left at the altar, suddenly kidnapped or exposed as an evil doppelganger, at least not yet. As the last product commercial jingle plays and the closing credits begin to roll, you take the final sip of your coffee and stretch your muscles. There is a tangible sense of relief, a small, calming bubble of awareness that the wider world can be completely wild, intensely chaotic, even deeply tragic. But for this brief half hour, you were completely in command. You can turn off the turmoil and get back to your own routine, one full of notes for the market, required forms, and the steady comfort of everyday clutter. You get up, dusting unseen lint from your lap, and step back into the action. The children will arrive soon, the board for ironing needs attention, and the telephone is likely to ring with a demand for 24 cupcakes by the following morning. But for that short 22 minutes, you were not merely a homemaker. You were a viewer, a critic, a silent partner in the dramatic soap operas of the day. And in the morning, when that music starts up again, you will be right here, your cup of coffee ready, anticipating your regular break. Because during the rush of the 1950s, everybody should get a moment of peace, even if it lasts only until the next advertisement. The groceries are not going to purchase themselves. You head out, holding your coupons, purse, and firm purpose. Everyone is watching, so your lip colour must stay perfect, even when you speak to the butcher. Leaving the residence in the 1950s is a major outing, more like a show for the public than a simple task. You glance at your reflection once more, hair smooth, clothing flawless, pearls fastened carefully, makeup precisely in place. The house might be messy, but you project complete poise, a personal display of domestic elegance. The unstated rule is if you cannot do it perfectly, at least look good doing it. The first destination is the market, a spot where reputations are earned and sometimes lost. In the section for baked goods, you review your list, which you made carefully and compared with the newest savings vouchers cut from magazines. These vouchers are your advantage, proof of your sensible spending and evidence that you are skilled in managing the household budget. You move through the aisles with the practiced skill of a military officer, knowing exactly when to splurge. Premium ground coffee, a packet of crackers, and when to be frugal. Canned vegetables again? Well, this is the reality. The area for fresh produce is a test. You examine the fruit, smell the melons, and inspect the tomatoes with the focus of someone solving a mystery. There is a precise difference between ripe and almost ripe, and you plan to find it. At every turn, familiar people offer greetings, exchange polite words, and naturally observe your cart for signs of adventurous cooking or simple laziness. The skill of buying food in the 1950s is equal parts making sure everyone eats and managing public opinion. And then there is the counter for meat, a social setting where only the toughest, or at least the best prepared, succeed. You smile at the butcher, exchanging light conversation about the cuts of meat while keeping perfect posture and an unsmudged line of lipstick. This is a subtle ritual, and everyone knows the moves. You pretend to be upset about the increasing cost of beef, fully aware that Mrs. Ferguson, standing behind you, is mentally recording everything for her next telephone call. You take your wrapped package with a smile and a silent wish that no liquid leaks through the wrapping before you get back to the car. Next, maybe, the bakery, where you look at the fresh loaves, wondering whether to treat yourself to something fancy and artisan or stick with the basic sandwich bread that lasts for a week. A short stop in the dairy case for milk and butter, and finally a quick check for special prices on basics like flour, sugar, or, if you are feeling adventurous, colourful gelatin in a new, slightly strange shade. All this time you keep your head high, your responses cheerful, and your pearls clearly visible. If anyone in the store thinks you look exhausted, you will hear about it forever. Tasks do not end with the groceries. You might stop at the dry cleaner to pick up your husband's shirts. Starch level? Extra stiff? Maybe a quick trip to the pharmacy where the druggist approves of your chosen toothpaste. You stop at the post office, exchanging small talk and pretending not to notice that Mrs. Miller's envelope for her electric bill was face down. These are all carefully organised parts of the daily life in the neighbourhood, where every trip outside is both a requirement and a social observation point. By the time you get back home, arms full and lipstick miraculously perfect, you are tired but victorious. The cupboard will be stocked, the meal for the evening will be underway, and most importantly, your standing remains excellent. You empty the bags, smooth out your clothes, and check the time, already planning the next major effort. Because in the environment of the 1950s homemaker, even a trip for food is a performance, one where the entire world is your audience, your neighbours are your reviewers, and your pearls are your defence. You might just be purchasing bread and butter, but you are also gaining time, calmness, and a certain amount of respect in the non-stop cycle of suburban existence. Dinner preparation starts even before lunch is completely finished. What can be created with 2 cans of soup, leftover meat, and something in the back of the refrigerator that might have been cheese? The options are limitless. The hunger is not. Casseroles are the unnoticed successes and sometimes the mysterious failures of the 1950s kitchen. They are both a creative outlet and a plan for survival, meant to make $1, a leftover, and the limits of good taste last longer. You open the pantry and look at your supplies: mushroom soup, curved pasta, canned vegetables, and the ever-present, slightly alarming red peppers. It is less a meal and more an edible project. A chance to gamble in the kitchen where the only thing guaranteed is that the food will be warm and probably a pale colour. You begin by creating the foundation. The rules for making a casserole are simple. Something starchy, something creamy, something savoury, and something theoretically that either grew on a plant or was once an animal. Last night's meat, cut into perfect small squares, is added to a cup of pasta, cooked until slightly too soft and solidly questionable in terms of texture. Into the pot goes the soup, a thick, sticky wonder of modern food processing, guaranteed to hold everything together with the power of salt and memory. The cheese, whatever it is, whatever its current colour, is bravely cut up and mixed in, adding a hint of the unknown to the whole mix, and the hope that it will, after baking, develop that necessary brown layer on top. You sprinkle dried bread or crushed chips on the surface for a crunch, and maybe throw on some frozen vegetables for a splash of colour, as if to promise the family that, yes, this dish includes actual greens. You do not recall when baked dishes became associated with a proper diet, but you suspect it was around the time someone figured out how to hide lima beans under melted cheese. As you mix, you are reminded that every casserole has one secret element, making things up as you go. The recipe might ask for cream, but you are out, so mayonnaise takes over like a replacement actor who memorized all the incorrect lines. If you feel brave, you might add a bit of a popular dark sauce or a suspiciously dated package of dry onion soup mix. Seasoning is less about taste and more about optimism. A little red pepper or a bit of black pepper is enough to keep things interesting and your family guessing. The finished mixture is moved into your reliable glass dish, a container as durable as your positive attitude. You place it in the oven, set the timer, and wipe your hands with the satisfied relief of someone who just created dinner from the least appealing contents of the refrigerator. The smell that quickly fills the room is strangely comforting, salty, full of starch, and familiar from every shared meal you have ever been to. It is an aroma that signifies, if nothing else, that the meal will be ready promptly, and that no one will leave the table hungry. And then the moment of truth. You present the casserole with a flourish, hoping the golden top layer distracts from the slightly strange texture underneath. The family gathers, forks ready, eyes doubtful. The first taste is met with a mix of relief and acceptance. It is warm, it is satisfying, and it is definitely better than last week's weird fish dish. Someone might ask, "What did you put in this?" But you respond only with a secretive smile and a gentle suggestion to eat before it cools down. Casseroles are more than just food. They are the edible symbol of the 1950s homemaker's creativity, resourcefulness, and pure determination. They are proof that you can create a meal from almost anything, that food does not have to be flawless to be enjoyed, and that sometimes the best ingredient is just making do. As you clean the dishes and think about tomorrow's mystery meal, you feel assured, knowing that in a world of uncertainty, there will always be another casserole waiting to be invented. The children rush in after school, dropping shoes, coats, and worries. You have to monitor, settle disputes, and make sure at least one of them finishes their schoolwork, and that nobody attempts to eat the adhesive. If the morning was a gradual start, the hours after 3 in the afternoon are a full-blown storm. The entrance door opens with all the subtlety of a loud alarm, and suddenly the quiet of your afternoon is broken by a flood of noise, requests for snacks, and unidentified smells. Footwear is thrown with great force. Outerwear is dropped in a path from the entrance to the nearest seat. And the school bag. Oh, the school bag. Emptied in the centre of the living area like a toy full of paper, leftover sandwich parts, and what might be the lost assignment from last September. Your first task is to assess the situation. Who is upset, who is arguing, and who has brought home a crucial note from the teacher that has been soaking in the bottom of a lunch container for 7 days. You move with practiced efficiency, separating siblings who are involved in a dramatic struggle over a picture book, rescuing a math sheet before it is stained with fruit spread, and removing a strange substance from someone's hair. You have become part detective, part medical assistant, and part global peacekeeper. The routine for the after-school snack is a small production in itself. You receive a flood of preferences and demands. May I have crackers with spread? Do we have any cookies? Is there any sweet gelatin left? Someone always wants something you do not have, and someone else always wants what you do have, just not the edge pieces. You provide cut fruit, or if things are going well, the last piece of leftover dessert. Each plate is measured carefully, not based on healthy eating, but in the hope of avoiding an argument over snacks. Now begins the challenge of the school work. One child insists they have nothing to do. Another has so much it must have been given as a penalty for a serious offence. You manage the action at the kitchen counter. Writing tools are located, erasers are saved from under the appliance, and the search for the essential glue stick starts again. You supervise spelling drills, untangle math problems, and try to explain why demonstrating your steps does not mean writing on the back of your hand. Every so often you notice someone attempting to give the family pet a piece of construction paper or trying to taste the adhesive. You step in with the tired authority of someone who has seen this many times and will, without a doubt, see it again. In the meantime, emotional issues are also dealt with. One child's closest friend hates them forever until tomorrow. Someone else lost a glove, had a bad hair day, or was chosen last for a game. You listen, comfort, and offer sound advice with the kind touch of a counsellor and the quickness of a short-order cook. You bandage scraped knees, resolve disagreements, and answer questions about why, specifically, fractions are necessary in the modern world. As the disorder continues, you watch the clock and the growing stack of paper on the kitchen counter. Forms needing signatures appear, requiring 3 different places to sign and a small payment. The school communication sheet appears, full of future chances for parental help that sounds suspiciously like unpaid work. The family pet begins barking at unseen invaders, a child attempts to steal an extra cookie, and the telephone rings just as you finally locate the misplaced sneaker. In this post-school whirlwind, you find yourself simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. You're a mediator, a source of comfort, a disciplinarian, and the ultimate champion dedicated to surviving until the evening meal with at least a shred of your composure intact. When the commotion fades and the academic work is generally finished, you let out a soft exhale, recognizing you have won this skirmish. And as you sweep up dropped bits of food, collect stray footwear, and prepare for the next phase, also known as dinner preparation, you are astounded that anyone ever suggested homemakers had an easy life. Because every afternoon, as your children return home, so does this recurring truth. pandemonium is simply another description for domestic life, and you are its courageous and somewhat worn-out commander. You transition into a personal educator, counselor, and expert tracker of forgotten items. Whether it is algebra problems, mismatched hosiery, or profound anxieties about the upcoming spelling competition, you manage it all with a composed expression and a smile that is growing increasingly strained. Welcome to the subsequent shift, which, like most moments in the existence of a 1950s housewife, is signalled not by a bell, but by a child asking Mom, what exactly is a gerund? While simultaneously misplacing their other shoe, their homework assignment, and possibly their grip on reality. You take your position at the kitchen table, a red grading pencil in one hand, a mug of lukewarm coffee in the other, braced for an onslaught of questions ranging from the mundane, is Pluto considered a planet? To the philosophical, why must we study fractions if Dad never uses them? Each question presents an opportunity for teaching resilience and occasionally clever fabrication. Homework supervision is a delicate maneuver, part military operation, part captive negotiation. One child is vigorously tearing holes into their spelling list with an eraser, another is sketching buccaneers on their math assignment, and a third has determined that this is the ideal moment to practice the clarinet at full volume in the adjacent room. Your objective is to forge order from the disorder, keeping every child focused without losing your own tenuous understanding of the difference between sharp and rounded corners. Naturally, the questions extend beyond school subjects. Where is my green folder? Have you seen my permission slip form? Why is my gym sock damp? You acquire an instinct for locating missing possessions, frequently finding them in places that defy common sense and the established rules of physics. Shoes resting in the freezer, pencils tucked into the bathroom vanity, lunchboxes inexplicably concealed behind the sofa. You accomplish these feats without expecting praise, understanding that the moment you retrieve one item, another will disappear. The universal rule of missing possessions is unbreakable. Amid all this, you handle emotional crises with the skill of a seasoned psychologist. One child is heartbroken over a mediocre test score. Another fears public shame in the forthcoming spelling bee. You provide encouraging speeches, comforting embraces, and, as a last resort, sweet snacks. You reassure them that everyone makes errors, that nobody remembers the child who could not spell radish, and that life will somehow proceed. It is emotional sorting, executed with a calm voice and eyes that occasionally dart toward the discreetly hidden packet of pain reliever. Sibling tensions also arise. Studying becomes a heated contest. Who finished first? Who was assigned the most challenging worksheet? Who gets to use the quality eraser? Disagreements are settled, tears are wiped, and you find yourself threatening to contact the school principal, Santa Claus, or possibly both. If harmony is not restored immediately, someone inevitably declares, "I wish I were an only child," which in your home is a clear signal for "I need a treat." As time passes, you realize you are not only managing their education, but also conducting the emotional atmosphere of the entire home. If one child breaks down, the others are likely to follow suit. If you show frustration, the entire evening unravels. You maintain a careful equilibrium, firm yet gentle, supportive yet truthful, always having a quick quip or a slight push to keep everyone's mood buoyant. When the final sum is calculated and the last flashcard is put away, you exhale a quiet breath of relief. The kitchen table is scattered with eraser shavings and sticky labels, but you have successfully navigated another session of homework and emotional maintenance with only a slight, involuntary twitch developing in your left eye. You gather the supplies, return the textbooks to their carriers, and promise yourself a small reward for enduring the trial. Perhaps a secret piece of confection or a brief moment of solitude in the utility room. Because in the realm of the 1950s homemaker, your qualifications include math tutor, motivational speaker, and grandmaster of lost and found. It is not listed on any official job description, but without your efforts, the entire household system would crumble into a mound of tears, pencil dust, and mismatched socks. Dinner is less a mere meal and more a small theatrical production. There are multiple servings, formal place settings, and an implied evaluation process involving everyone at the table and possibly your spouse's mother via telephone. The performance begins at exactly 6 in the evening when you announce, loudly enough for even the pet to hear, that the meal is prepared. Everyone gathers with varying levels of excitement sparked by the smell of something rich in cheese, creamy, or, if it is Friday, covered in tinned fruit. The dining area, meticulously arranged earlier, now glows beneath the watchful eye of a flower centerpiece, coordinating linens, and your best attempt at soft light ambience, assuming the children have not snapped the candles in half during their homework session. The great unveiling, the first course arrives, perhaps a neat little starter salad topped with precisely half a dozen bread cubes. You set the bowls before your family with a flourish worthy of a professional host, the introductory scene in tonight's domestic drama. There is a precise arrangement to the seating, your spouse at the head, children positioned along the sides, all faces momentarily hopeful and slightly sceptical. The dog waits underneath the table, poised to snatch any dropped string bean. Courteous conversation begins, usually initiated by you. How was school today? How was the office? Responses range from okay to I don't recall, interspersed with the noise of falling cutlery and the occasional dramatic sigh. Your spouse might mention the current events or something from their workplace. They are considering installing a new drinking fountain at the office, while the children, if they are not too focused on eating, might recount the day's scandals. Who broke the chalk drawing record? Who received a golden star sticker? Who used a bad word and is now permanently grounded until university? Second act, the main attraction, the large baked dish makes its spectacular entry, golden and steaming, flanked by side portions arranged with the exactness of military planning. Potatoes, either whipped, sliced and baked, or roasted until nearly charred, are scooped onto plates. Green beans, potentially from a can, potentially improved with a generous amount of fat. Fat and salt provide the necessary vibrant colour and nutritional ambiguity. Bread rolls are passed around, and the butter dish takes a slow journey around the table. You serve, calmly dismissing objections. Why is there celery in this dish? Is this actual cheese, or merely wishful thinking? With a serene expression and an invitation to just try a small amount. You keep one ear open for the subtle signs of approval, a request for a second helping, a compliment about the casserole topping, or, if you are truly fortunate, silence broken only by the sound of chewing. Of course, there is always the remote critic, your spouse's mother, who may call during the dessert course to inquire about the menu and offer her unsolicited directions for making proper sauce. Third act. The conclusion, dessert, is your final bow. Perhaps it is a shimmering gelatin mould or a tray of freshly baked fudge squares. The family's mood improves as the sugar affects their systems, stories flow more freely, and laughter emerges, sometimes at your own expense, especially if the potatoes reached a state of weightlessness. Earlier dishes are cleared, the table is wiped down, and the kitchen transforms from a performance stage into a disaster zone. As the family leaves, you examine the aftermath. Breadcrumbs, fallen napkins, and a small wave of green vegetables hidden near the heating vent. Throughout the meal, your performance has been flawless. Hostess, head cook, social facilitator, and food diplomat, you have handled feedback both complimentary. This tastes wonderful and devastating. Can I just have some breakfast cereal instead? With the composure of someone who understands that tomorrow's dinner will be a completely different production. Behind the scenes, you prepare for the applause that never materializes, only a quiet home and a tower of soiled dishes waiting in the sink. Because dinner in the 1950s is not just about the food itself. It is about maintaining family unity, upholding custom, and ensuring everyone leaves the table feeling a little bit more satisfied and perhaps, just perhaps, ready to face the following day. The reviewers will return, the critiques will continue, but tonight you bring the curtain down on another successful performance. After dinner, the kitchen returns to disorder and you return to your cleaning duties. Scrape, immerse, stack, repeat. Because nothing signifies relaxation quite like soaking your hands in a blend of unknown food remnants. No sooner does the last piece of silverware touch a plate than the true scale of the dinner aftermath becomes apparent. The dining table, recently the setting for your finest baked dish display, is now a scene of destruction. Plates are piled in shaky towers, serving bowls harden with a strange thick residue, and linens so recently neat and folded resemble the result of a small but focused storm. The family makes a quick exit, dispersing in all directions. Suddenly, no one can hear you request assistance with the dishes. Even the pet disappears, knowing instinctively that kitchen cleanup is the only fate worse than being dressed as an insect for the fall holiday. So you push up your sleeves and begin the second phase of the nightly cleaning ritual. The routine begins with the crucial scraping, removing pieces of burnt cheese, escaped vegetables, and an unidentified substance that could be either a slice of ham or a failed home experiment. Each plate tells a unique story. A stubborn stain here, a suspiciously untouched piece of greenery there. Every scraping action is a reminder of both your diligent effort and the never-ending cycle of the evening meal. Now it is time to fill the basin. You run hot water until the room is steamy like a sauna. Add a generous amount of citrus-scented cleaning liquid and summon the determination of countless generations. Into the suds go the dishes, bowls, glasses and utensils, each sinking with a satisfying sound. You tackle the cooking vessels first, gripping the scrubbing tool like a warrior handling a sword. Stuck-on food is a formidable opponent, burnt bits at the base of the baking dish. That is precisely what strenuous effort and maybe some silent frustration were created for. Washing dishes in the 1950s is both a meditative task and demanding physical labour. There is a specific rhythm to the work. Scrub, rinse, place on rack, repeat. The lather offers a temporary distraction, reflecting light in the dimming kitchen illumination. You momentarily drift into a fantasy of a world where washing machines for dishes are as standard as toasters, or where children enthusiastically offer their help. Then a clump of something unrecognizable floats by, and you're pulled back to the present, bravely fishing it out and trying not to question if it has been officially evaluated. Once the dishes are clean, or sufficiently clean by 1950s standards, you place them on the drying rack, plates upright, glasses inverted, silverware neatly organised so no one is accidentally hurt reaching for a spoon. Drying cloths follow, and you polish every plate as if the most famous homemaker herself were observing through your window. Any speck or line is a reflection of poor quality, so you rub vigorously until the dishware shines like the hope you once held for a quick afternoon nap. Of course, there is still the floor to manage: stray crumbs, spilled liquid, perhaps a crushed green bean from the second act of the evening meal. As a theatrical performance, you sweep, wipe, and finally hang the drying cloth with a flourish. Only then, with the kitchen returned to its sparkling, company-ready condition, do you permit yourself a small pause, a moment of self-satisfaction. You admire your work and wonder how long this cleanliness will last. Statistically, about 37 minutes. In this nightly routine of dishwashing and disaster management, you are both the featured artist and the supporting cast. It is not glamorous, but there is a strange, strong sense of fulfillment in bringing order from chaos, in restoring a feeling of calm to your kitchen before the next invasion. Because you understand, as every 1950s housewife understands, that the sequence will happen again tomorrow and you will be prepared. drying cloth in hand to lead the way. As the family disperses, your spouse requires an update about his day, the news events, the stock market, and whether the people next door have finally repaired their barrier. You nod, smile, and file away the most recent gossip for later use. The after-dinner routine is not, as outsiders might assume, a period for resting. It is the official beginning of the daily husband debriefing, a custom that is equal parts performance review, information summary, and comfortable fireside discussion. Without the fire, but with a lot of quiet, simultaneous tasking, the sofa transforms into the command centre. He settles down, necktie loosened, soft slippers on, the evening newspaper spread out like a diplomatic file. You take your position close by, coffee in hand, ready for another session of supportive listening. He starts with the news headlines, as if reading them aloud somehow confirms their reality. The market is up today. Johnson mentioned the office might install a new automated dispenser. You respond appropriately. A mild O for neutral information, a rehearsed really for minor successes, and the always polite. That's interesting when the conversation shifts to office politics, which are just as complex and unsolvable as children's disputes, but with fewer refreshment breaks. You are expected to take in, evaluate and respond, often while simultaneously folding clothes, creating a shopping list and silently urging the pet to please stop licking the rug. The difficulty lies in appearing fully attentive even as your mind races through all the tasks remaining. The children's cleaning, tomorrow's packed lunches, whether you remembered to take the dessert out of the cold storage. Yet you nod and with impressive dedication are careful to offer an encouraging smile or a look of sympathy at precisely the correct moments. Now arrives the neighbourhood information. Who is painting their outside window coverings? Who has let their grass turn brown? And who, according to rumour, might be purchasing a boat they absolutely cannot manage financially? You store these details away, careful not to repeat anything that could trigger an internal conflict at the next parent-teacher meeting. Every community has its own complex social protocols, and you, unofficially, are both the representative and the head of intelligence gathering. Occasionally he will inquire about your own day, a question you answer with the important points. The pile of laundry was huge. The children are still in one piece, and Mrs. Ferguson visited to discuss the deep meaning of thick vegetable soup. You both share a quiet laugh, briefly unified in the understanding that suburban existence, for all its sameness, is never truly dull. The debriefing continues as he works his way through the publication, sometimes reading aloud an article about new automobiles, advancements in space travel, or the ongoing global conflict. You listen with the same concentration you reserve for the children's stories, filtering out the unnecessary background noise and noting the parts that might actually be relevant. At times, you will interject with your own piece of local gossip, a comment about the neighbours, or an anecdote from the market. It is a quiet exchange, a method of connecting the day's events to keep the outside world at a manageable distance. And yes, sometimes the discussion wanders to deeper aspirations for the future, work frustrations, or a passing thought about whether anyone ever truly repairs their barrier. These are the moments where the roles of spouse, trusted confidant and partner blend, reminding you that the bond of marriage is constructed not merely on grand displays but on the small nightly custom of sharing and listening. By the time the coffee has cooled and the newspaper is put away, the house feels a little calmer, a little more protected. He will stretch, state his intention to retire soon, and you will gather the last of the used mugs and quietly move to the kitchen. Another debriefing complete, another day survived. In a world that demands structure, control and unwavering pleasantness, you have succeeded in providing one safe haven, one place where everyone, even the primary provider, can relax and let the strain of the day dissipate. You let out a breath, knowing tomorrow will bring another round of news, another episode of local drama and another session of debriefings. But for tonight, you have fulfilled your duty, silent, constant, and always attentive. Now you must wash the children, a process involving cleaning products, loud complaints, and the never-ending search for clean pajamas that still fit them. The clock signals the start of bath time, and suddenly the entire home transitions into a different kind of turmoil. Bath time is the nightly custom where your parental authority faces its ultimate challenge and the children's inventiveness peaks, usually in the service of avoiding the inevitable. The simple suggestion of getting undressed and heading to the water is met with a chorus of arguments, sudden thirst, pressing philosophical inquiries. Why does water feel wet? And the type of sadness typically reserved for classic theatrical works. You draw a deep breath and summon the resilience of every parent who has ever had to pursue an unclothed child down a corridor. Getting the children into the bathroom is an accomplishment of logistics worthy of official recognition. One is concealed beneath the bed, another has become strangely sticky, and the third is making a final stand atop the living room seating, brandishing a toy weapon and demanding just a few more minutes. You negotiate, you offer inducements, you issue threats, sometimes all simultaneously. Eventually, the group is gathered into the warm, echoing area of the bathroom, where the real conflict begins. Into the tub they go, amidst a barrage of complaints about the water temperature, the lack of space, and the continuous disagreement over who gets the preferred water toy. Cleaning product is dispensed, often with the force of a sudden downpour, and lather explodes like a cartoon eruption. Someone attempts to fashion a foam beard, someone else invents a new activity involving splashing water over the edge, and you stand ready with a drying cloth, part judge and part cleaning crew, mentally calculating whether the tile sealant will withstand tonight's onslaught. You begin the standard routine. Hair washing, face scrubbing, ears examined with motherly care for remnants of outdoor grime or last week's decorative sparkle. Cleanser gets into eyes, tears are shed, and a dispute erupts over who is allowed to use the dinosaur-patterned washcloth. There are yells, laughter, and enough spilled water to cover a small territory. Bath time is both an endurance test and a humorous performance, starring you as the overworked, calm figure attempting to impose cleanliness in a world that values disorder. Getting them clean is only half the task. The other half is locating bedtime clothes that 1. Coordinate, 2. Are the correct size, and 3. Are not currently inside the dog's resting place. Children develop at a rate that seems specifically designed to undermine your purchasing ability. You search through storage units, finding choices that were ideal last week but now expose too much ankle, or threaten to restrict movement at the wrist. Finally, everyone is dry, dressed generally speaking, and smelling faintly of floral notes and triumph. But the struggle is not yet complete. Damp cloths appear everywhere except the designated basket. Dental cleaners become play weapons, and the floor is now a slippery surface featuring lather, cleaning rags, and one rogue building block. There is a frantic search for a preferred stuffed toy or blanket, without which sleep is apparently impossible. You manage the turmoil with a steady hand and a sense of tired acceptance, knowing that tonight's challenge will be repeated with minor differences tomorrow. As you guide your recently clean but still restless children from the bathroom to their sleeping areas, you perform a final count, quickly recheck their ears, and offer a silent prayer for a night free of requests for water after midnight. Bath time in all its noisy, chaotic, exhausting splendour is finished. You turn off the bathroom light and close the door on the puddles, towels, and a successfully completed job. For a moment, the dwelling settles into silence, a profound stillness. You have made it through another round of water fights and soap suds, and the children, impossibly, are in clean pyjamas, just a few bedtime stories away from unconsciousness. You pause, letting out a breath, then ready yourself for the next stage. The monumental negotiation of the nightly routine in the continuing narrative of 1950s family life. Bath time wasn't about cleansing, it was an exercise in affection, endurance, and the hard-earned realization that having clean kids, however brief the condition, is a small victory to cherish. Settled in their beds with a book, a drink of water, and having required at least 3 separate trips to the lavatory, your children employ the relentless negotiating skills of legal experts to postpone sleep. This is the concluding section of the evening ritual, the part intended to be tender, calm and heartfelt, but which frequently feels more like a diplomatic summit combined with a wrestling match. You tuck your freshly washed pyjama-clad children into their beds, smoothing the linens and fluffing the cushions as if attending to royalty, preparing for slumber. On the nightstand, a pile of worn books sits beside a water glass, along with the quiet agreement that this is merely the commencement of the end. You carefully open the book, adjusting your voice for maximum impact because a successful bedtime narrative demands a full range of emotion, from roaring titans to murmuring woodland creatures. The children are captivated by every syllable, at least for the first 3 pages, until someone breaks in to ask why mythical beasts cannot inhabit your backyard, or if canines experience dreams, or why falling asleep is impossible without the crimson blanket, even though last week it was the sapphire one. You reply patiently, a solo department of frequently asked questions, skillfully blending fantasy logic with the rules of the physical world. With reading time complete, you proceed to the initial phase of bargaining. I need to visit the toilet. May I have another cup of water? My leg is tingling. I forgot to brush my teeth. Each request is delivered with the conviction of a child who genuinely believes that sleep is a rare and hazardous condition. You gently guide them back beneath the covers, straightening sheets and giving hugs, offering reassurance that yes, the night light is functioning, and no, there are certainly no creatures hiding beneath the bed, unless you count stray socks and the occasional fluff ball. Next begins the prolonged campaign of stalling. Someone abruptly recalls a vital need to discuss prehistoric reptiles or presents a deeply philosophical query about the necessity of sleep itself. But what if I have a dream I do not like? They inquire, their lower lip trembling. Can you stay until my eyes close? You agree to conditions. 5 more minutes, one last story, a tune. If quiet is maintained by everyone, your repertoire expands. Evening lullabies, simple rhymes, improvised melodies invented in the hope that repetition will finally induce slumber. But bedtime in the 1950s is more than just helping children to sleep. It is about establishing a feeling of security, comfort and routine in a world that can often seem immense and puzzling. You secure them tightly, ensuring cherished stuffed toys stand guard by their side, ready to combat bad dreams, or, at the very least, provide silent encouragement until morning. The soft glow from the hallway penetrates the room as you whisper your final goodnight and move stealthily toward the exit. Naturally, a quick escape is unlikely. Someone calls you to return. Another question? A demand for a different pillow? A complaint that their toe feels peculiar? You go back, adjust the bedding, give one more kiss, and softly promise to be just down the hallway. This simple vow, more than anything else, is what finally establishes a feeling of calm. As their breathing deepens and their eyelids begin to settle, you finally allow yourself a full breath. You exit the room on tiptoe, closing the door with the careful precision of a safecracker. For a moment the residence is silent, a peaceful quiet broken only by the distant electronic hum of the television and the faint churn of the refrigerator. You know this respite is temporary. Someone will call out for you before you have even finished returning the storybooks to the shelf. But for now, you have seen your family through another day, navigating the bedtime hour with the elegance, patience, and political savvy of a seasoned diplomat. Ultimately, bedtime is not just a contest for sleep. It is a nightly demonstration of affection, a monument to persistence, and proof that no matter how worn out you are, there is always energy for one more embrace, one more tale, and, without fail, one last visit to the bathroom. Once everyone is asleep, you observe the home. The main living area is tidy, the folded laundry is stacked, and the kitchen has been returned to its former pristine condition. You grant yourself 5 minutes to simply look at the wall. It is almost midnight, and the house is finally quiet, a peace so uncommon and delicate you are almost afraid to take a loud breath. You walk from space to space in your house slippers, performing final checks like a museum night watchman, maintaining the fragile balance between order and mess. The sofa pillows are straightened and realigned for the third time today. The floor covering is smoothed, magazine piles are squared, and the television is switched off, its final flickering image fading into shadow. For a brief period you simply exist, suspended between the day that concluded and the new day already advancing behind you. In the kitchen, the surfaces are wiped down, crumbs are found and removed, and the coffee maker is prepared for the next morning's early campaign. The floor gleams faintly under the gentle illumination of the stove light, a sign of achievement in a sea of endless repetition. The dishcloth hangs flawlessly, the sink sparkles, and even the waste bin is empty, its fresh lining a modest yet powerful symbol of victory over decay. You collect the remaining laundry from the day, folding and stacking each garment with ritualistic precision. It is almost meditative. Shirt, towel, pillowcase, each crisp fold a quiet statement of control. The scent of clean cotton mixes with the subtle traces of soap and starch, a sensory satisfaction for effort only you will fully appreciate. You return the hampers to their spot, content, and remind yourself that even if the family does not see the distinction, you certainly do. These few minutes, seized just for yourself, are invaluable and fleeting. You sink into your preferred chair, sometimes with a magazine, sometimes with nothing at all, merely allowing your mind to wander. Your thoughts drift from tomorrow's food shopping list to the novel you have not finished, to the peculiar quiet that settles over a home filled with sleeping individuals and newly laundered sheets. You might treat yourself to a piece of confection or a small amount of fortified wine, a small act of defiance in a world that expects you to be ceaselessly selfless. It is during these quiet intervals that you reconnect with yourself, not merely as a spouse, a parent, or a manager of household details, but as an individual with your own quiet aspirations, recollections, and private jokes. Perhaps you catch sight of your own reflection in the window, slightly dishevelled hair, gentle eyes ringed with tiredness, and the slightest expression of triumph. You are still present. The structure is still standing. Nothing caught fire. And that, in the larger context, is a success. Outside, the neighbourhood is still. Porch lights glimmer. Automobiles are tucked into driveways, and the world feels smaller, more secure. You wonder if the other homemakers on your street are also awake, relishing these private moments when no one requires anything, when every demand and anticipation is momentarily paused. In this quiet, you are linked by unseen bonds, shared fatigue, pride, and the quiet certainty that come daybreak, the entire cycle begins anew. Eventually, your eyelids feel heavy, and you rise, placing your cup in the sink alongside the rest of the day's concerns. You extinguish the lights one by one, the house descending into shadow, and quietly move to bed. Tomorrow will bring more disorder, more cleaning, more unforeseen challenges, and you will face them all with the same combination of humour, resourcefulness, and silent late-night determination. Because the true secret of the 1950s homemaker is not only found in the immaculate surfaces or the folded towels, it is in the capacity to carve out a moment of tranquility, to value the quiet that follows the upheaval, and to restore not only the house, but yourself for whatever lies ahead. It is time for personal maintenance, which in this decade means cold cream, hairpins, and perusing a magazine feature titled 10 Ways to Please Your Man and Polish Your Silverware. The children are asleep, the house is peaceful, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, you have a door you can close. This is the precious hour of the 1950s housewife, your nightly ritual with your reflection, a handful of cosmetic routines, and the kind of subtle rebellion that occurs with the bathroom door securely fastened. You arrange your supplies on the sink, a pot of cold cream, a jar of Pond's, a worn tube of crimson lip colour, and a cup of water for dampening your pin curls. Tonight's cosmetic routine is as much about the process as it is about the outcome. You commence with the cold cream, applying a small amount to your fingertips. It is chilling and thick, promising to remove the day's residue, along with any lingering uncertainties about your merit as both a female and a keeper of fine tableware. There is something profoundly comforting about rubbing the cream over your face, feeling the day's tension melt away with each smooth, circular motion. For a few minutes, you are not considering parent-teacher gatherings or cooking mishaps, just the calming coolness, the soft fragrance, and the gentle reassurance that you are, after all, looking after yourself. Pin curls follow, a nightly structural project demanding patience, coordination, and more hair clips than any single person should legally possess. You separate your hair, twist and fasten, following the same technique your mother taught you and her mother before her. Every curl is a small act of hope for the next day. Perhaps you will wake up looking slightly less tired, a little more like the cover illustration on a domestic magazine. It is not truly about impressing anyone. It is about reclaiming a small amount of elegance in a world that demands so much utility. You change into your nightgown, perhaps lacy, perhaps practical, but always clean, and settle into bed with a magazine. The pages are glossy. The promises are outlandish. One headline advertises 7 secret beauty tricks every husband will notice. Another boasts how to keep your kitchen, your children, and your peace of mind sparkling. You leaf through the publication, feeling equally entertained and puzzled, noting the suggestions about lemon juice for elbows and the endless stream of miracle lotions. Sometimes you cut out a recipe or a domestic tip for your notebook, but mostly you read to remember that you are not by yourself. There are millions of women across thousands of communities lying in bed at this very minute, their skin tingling with minty cream and their minds spinning with lists for the next day. Maybe you dab a touch of fragrance behind your ears just for the sake of it. Maybe you pick up the nail file or paint your toenails a cheerful, challenging pink. For a moment, you set aside the relentless requirements of parent, spouse, daughter, neighbour, and simply exist. You recall aspirations, some pursued, some deferred for the time being, and you feel in your own quiet way renewed. Personal care in this decade is not luxurious bathing or spa visits. It is the 10 quiet minutes with your own reflection. It is the cool rush of moisturizer, the promise of springy curls, the absurd survey about your marital competence. It is granting yourself permission to be something other than efficient, useful, and presentable. To be gentle, silly, hopeful, or just genuinely exhausted. You switch off the light, slide beneath the blankets, and let yourself relax. Tomorrow will be another long effort, but for now you are simply yourself, clean, curled, satisfied, and ready for rest, because the genuine key to enduring the 1950s is not found in cold cream or pin curls. It is in the small, determined acts of self-maintenance, quiet routines that remind you that beneath all the roles you perform, you deserve kindness from yourself most of all. The house is quiet, but your thoughts are busy. Did you forget to prepare lunch? Did you contact the repairman? Did you remember to truly live? You eventually drift off, wondering what tomorrow's baked dish will be and if anyone will ever notice the dust behind the set. There is a unique silence that settles over the house at the stroke of midnight. It is not the silence of completion or contentment, but the hush that comes when everyone else is finally asleep, leaving you alone with your own thoughts and the gentle ticking of the clock in the hall. You lie in bed, one arm exposed, the room cool and still, and suddenly the day's obligations seem to resonate louder than ever. All the lists you checked off today seem to reappear in the dark, much like laundry, never-ending, multiplying, and never fully conquered. You scan the space, noting small flaws, the curtain hem that is coming undone, the light bulb that is a little too dim, the footwear in the hallway that never makes it into the storage space. Your brain selects this exact moment to review every pending task, every missed call, every piece of footwear that has gone missing since 1947. You briefly contemplate if anyone ever notices these things but you. And if they do not, does that mean you can finally disregard them? But letting go is more difficult than it sounds, particularly in a world where order and control feel like the only things preventing slow, steady chaos. Your mind replays conversations from the day. Did you use the correct phrasing with the teacher? Was your baked dish good enough for the neighbour? Was that sigh your husband gave after supper about the starch or about the garden fence again? Each thought cycles and spirals, generating new anxieties with every passing minute. The practical worries arrive first. Did you make the children's lunches? Is there sufficient bread for breakfast? Or will you have to substitute with crackers and silent apologies? Did you remember to sign the field trip permission slip, to check the school folder, to leave a note for the milk delivery person? Was the utility room door left ajar for the animal? Or will you be awakened at 2 a.m. by wailing and the unmistakable sound of breaking glassware? Then, as the immediate worries subside, the deeper, more profound ones enter. Are you a sufficiently good parent, spouse, neighbour? Is the house ever truly clean? Or does dust simply move from one space to another, evading your best efforts? Do your children feel secure and loved? Will they recall story time and home-cooked meals? Or will their strongest memory be that time you overcooked the meatloaf? When was the last time you laughed simply for yourself or acted spontaneously? You turn over, adjusting the pillow, attempting to concentrate on your breathing. The house is resting, but you are still working out the minor details of tomorrow. Groceries to buy, forms to endorse, casseroles to invent. Even as your body craves sleep, your mind refuses to power down. The stream of midnight worries is a solitary experience, yet also strangely universal. You imagine, somewhere down the street, another woman lying awake, gazing at the ceiling and contemplating if the world will disintegrate if she does not get up and wipe the kitchen counter one last time. Eventually, your thoughts slow, soothed by the comforting repetition of your daily customs and the soft rhythms of the house. The cooling unit hums, the floorboards adjust. A vehicle passes by in the distance. You allow your worries to lessen to a low murmur, promising yourself that tomorrow you will put forth your best effort, and that perhaps, just perhaps, the dust behind the television can wait another day. Sleep arrives gently, a temporary ceasefire between exhaustion and obligation. Tomorrow will bring new lists, new anxieties, and undoubtedly another baked dish. But for now you rest, held by the quiet of a house that is finally, mercifully at peace, even if your mind needs a little more time to catch up. Every so often you are summoned to the school for a parents' association meeting, a delicate diplomatic gathering where relationships are formed, pastries are evaluated, and someone inevitably suggests a fun fundraising activity that will burden you for months. The attire is competitive, floral. The mood is tense. The silent understanding, never show weakness. When the assignments for the baked goods sale are given out, you prepare for the meeting with the concentration and anxiety of someone about to enter a war room, not a multi-purpose space decorated with happy student artwork and the faint aroma of glue. You select your clothing meticulously, a patterned dress just prominent enough to convey confidence, small jewels to demonstrate seriousness, and a purse with ample space for at least 3 emergency tissues. A platter of cookies or brownies is carried under your arm. Presentation is vital, and you never know when a perfectly timed pecan bar might save your status. The meeting commences promptly at 7 in the evening as a procession of accomplished parents and the occasional courageous father file into the movable chairs, observing one another with the guarded respect of skilled chess players. The head of the school calls the meeting to order, and for the following hour you are a diplomat, strategist, and secret operative all at once. You make silent mental notes on seating arrangements, who contributed what food and which treats, are receiving the most favourable comments. Power structures materialise not from official titles, but from whispered alliances, subtle looks, and the ability to organise a bake sale without becoming emotional. The first item on the agenda is always the summary of the previous meeting. You nod seriously, pretending to remember the decisions made last month. Something involving new mulch for the recreation area, something about the spring formal, and always something about financial deficits. Someone suggests a new fundraiser, a car washing event, a chili cooking competition, or, most dreaded of all, a fun run. You hold your breath as the concept is debated, knowing that the word volunteer will soon reverberate through the room like a challenge from a television host. Then come the committee assignments. You try to appear occupied, flipping through your notepad, but it is no use. The eyes of the fundraising director scan the room like searchlights. You offer a strained smile, calculating the various ways you can say "I'm happy to assist" without being appointed to lead the entire endeavour. It is a high-stakes scenario, and you appeal to the gods of light duty for mercy. Unfortunately, your name is called for the baked goods sale once more. You nod politely, mentally reassessing your baking supplies and reminding yourself to avoid the peanut butter cookie dispute from the previous year. As the official matters continue, discussions flow in hushed tones. Who has had a disagreement with the art instructor? Whose child was disruptive during last week's school gathering? There is an ongoing commentary about new attendees, long-standing disputes, and who produces the finest lemon bars. You participate with controlled eagerness, taking care to be supportive but never overly zealous, lest you be volunteered for yet another smaller task force. The treats are judged both silently and overtly. Someone's brownies are too soft. Someone else's snickerdoodles look suspiciously commercially produced. You offer compliments with the diplomatic grace of an ambassador. Behind every smile is the awareness that in this room standing is gained or lost based on the lightness of a baked good. When the meeting finally ends, you let out a relieved breath. You have survived the trial. You depart with a fresh stack of announcements to distribute, a list of phone numbers for the bake sale, and at least one private invitation to meet for coffee and exchange observations later in the week. As you drive back to your home, you are amazed by the strange, complex interactions of Parents' Association politics, a world where the consequences are more significant than they appear, and the social manoeuvring is as complicated as any dramatic television series. Because ultimately, the Parents' Association is not just about raising money and making cookies. It is about neighbourhood pride and the lasting truth that in every school, the crucial tasks are completed after hours by a small group of tired women in competing floral prints, carrying platters of cookies and the burden of the world's next enjoyable event. The mail receptacle is both an ally and an adversary. Each day you approach it with a mix of anticipation, a letter from a distant relative, a magazine with a recipe for sophisticated gelatin, and apprehension, invoices, more invoices, and a curious flyer for lawn decorations. You stand in your driveway sorting through envelopes and deep self-doubt, wondering if anyone will ever write simply to connect. In the daily rhythm of 1950s suburbia, the trip to the mailbox is a custom filled with suspense, optimism, and a subtle hint of dread. The journey from your front door to the street is both physical and symbolic. A brief, solitary walk across the neatly kept yard, your eyes glancing up and down the street to see if any neighbours are observing. You smooth your dress, check your hair, and attempt to convey the image of someone who is untroubled by whatever information might be concealed behind the shiny metal flap. You open the container, your heart giving a slight jump, hoping for a handwritten envelope with an unfamiliar return address, a surprise note, perhaps a birthday greeting you had forgotten about, or, if luck is with you, a payment from that long-lost family member who finally struck oil in the West. But most days it is a mix of utility bills, advertisements for retail stores, and a catalogue for items you cannot imagine anyone truly needing. Lawn ornamentation now with realistic brow features. Still you examine the stack with the respect of an archaeologist revealing the secrets of a vanished society. Some days bring genuine rewards. A letter from a relative penned in her delicate script, full of family gossip and dubious recipes. Try gelatin with canned fish, very fashionable. There might be a card from a travelling friend, a school bulletin, or best of all, a thick magazine promising new food preparation ideas, cosmetic suggestions, and aspirational interior design. You hold these small moments of pleasure close, a reminder that there is a world beyond your home walls filled with narratives, distant friends, and the reassuring knowledge that at least someone is thinking of you. But just as often the mailbox brings trouble. The electricity invoice arrives heavier than the last month's, and the water invoice follows closely, mocking your fantasies of a backyard pool. There is a letter from the bank, never a good sign, and inevitably a notice from the Parents' Association reminding you that you have been automatically enrolled to manage the next baked goods sale. You sigh, already mapping out your shopping list for 36 small cakes and an emergency pastry. Among the routine paperwork, there are always unexpected items. Sometimes it is a catalogue advertising impossibly cheerful window treatments for the kitchen. Sometimes it is an invitation to a formal event or a church gathering. And sometimes, if you're truly unlucky, it is an advertisement for burial plots, complete with a complimentary writing utensil. You stand in your driveway, fanning the mail like a deck of cards, separating the urgent from the disposable, the personal from the frustratingly mundane. As you return to the house, you allow yourself a moment of wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be lovely if just once the mailbox contained a letter simply for pleasure? Not an invitation, not a bill, not a catalogue for decorative lawn items, but a straightforward note from someone who wanted to greet you, to inquire, to remind you that you are valued outside of transportation schedules and food exchanges. You make a mental note to send a letter to your cousin next week, perhaps starting a ripple of simple gestures that moves through your own acquaintances. Back inside, you place the stack of correspondence on the kitchen counter, putting invoices into the to-be-handled pile, setting aside the catalogue for a quiet evening's amusement, and placing the relative's letter beside the recipe container for safety. The daily contest with the mailbox is ongoing, part of the regular flow of domestic life, a blend of aspirations, chores, and surprises that never entirely loses its ability to excite or disappoint. In the end, you find solace in the custom, because every day the mailbox holds the potential for news, for happiness, for a small connection, and every day you are ready to engage in the battle once more, one letter, one invoice, one hopeful trip at a time. Nothing tests your readiness like the door chime sounding at 2 p.m. Suddenly, it is a full-scale emergency. Teacups out, lip colour reapplied, and a frantic effort to conceal evidence of real life. The heap of toys, the strange experimental gelatin dish hidden behind decorative pillows. Your greeting must be as fresh as the coffee. Never mind that you have just defeated a dust accumulation the size of a small dog. The 1950s homemaker lives with a constant, low-grade fear of the guest who arrives without warning. The neighbourhood operates on a social structure of unexpected visits, quick stops, and "oh, I was just nearby." Each one is a potential social obstacle, part performance, part emergency response. The first ring of the doorbell is like the starting signal at a race. You instantly jump into action, slippers flying, your mind already scanning the area for anything that looks too genuine, too inhabited, too "please do not judge me by the condition of my floor covering." The routine is exact. First, you hide any signs of disorder, socks beneath cushions, colouring materials into the nearest drawer, breakfast dishes concealed in the oven. Toys are rapidly cleared from the rug and tossed behind the sofa. Laundry baskets are pushed into storage spaces with a silent plea that nothing will fall out when you later retrieve them. You perform a rapid search for stray crumbs, stray children, and that experimental gelatin mould you swore you would never let another person witness. Just to be sure, you reposition the fruit selection, placing the most vibrant apples on top and ensuring the bananas are, at the very least, not completely brown. Swiftly, you move to the bathroom mirror for a quick emergency touch-up. Lipstick refreshed, hair smoothed down, apron adjusted, any trace of flour or syrup is quickly dabbed away, and you offer yourself the motivational rally of a determined understudy on opening night. You are prepared for this. This is what all the practice was for. You are the ideal 1950s homemaker, and if nothing else is recorded in history, it will be noted that your winged eyeliner was perfectly aligned and your living room presented an illusion of total control. The coffee machine is set to bubble with a precision that would impress the most discerning European espresso maker. The fine china teacups and saucers, the ones meant only for company, never for the family's use, are quickly retrieved from their safe place deep inside the cupboard. Sugar bowl out, cream poured, and cookies arranged on a plate. The preferred option is always the good store-bought kind, but if time is tight, the experimental gelatin dish is presented with the kind of hopeful confidence usually reserved for student projects that went slightly wrong. As you ease the front door open, your face set in a carefully practiced expression of delighted shock. You welcome your visitor. Mrs. Ferguson, Mrs. Miller, a woman from the church group, or the cousin of a neighbour who just happened to be in the area. You gently guide them into the main room, silently praying that they avoid sitting on the patch concealing the tomato stain and that the family dog remembers its instructions not to bother guests or beg for treats. The talk begins to flow, or at least it manages to continue politely. You cover the usual topics: the weather, the latest school gossip, who is seeing whom, and trade notes on new recipes. Through it all, you remain intensely conscious of every surface, checking from the corner of your eye that no new layer of dust has settled and that no child is trying to sneak behind the sofa with melting frozen treats. You offer the coffee with a smile so radiant it could disinfect a kitchen counter, dismissing small household failures with lines such as, "Oh, you understand how it goes. Children everywhere. Never a quiet moment." With the final sip of coffee and the last kind word about your flower arrangement, the high-stress moment is over. Your guest collects her handbag, promises to return again in the near future, and vanishes back into the suburban landscape. You shut the door and lean your back against it, your heart slowing as the rush of adrenaline subsides. You look over the scene, start the gradual process of tidying up, and reward yourself with the plate of guest cookies. You certainly earned them. For the 1950s woman, the unexpected caller is not just a test of your hosting skills. It is the ultimate trial of composure under pressure, creativity, and the ability to make sudden chaos look like perfect tranquility in an instant. And you, against all expectations, manage to succeed every single time. Every morning, you face the same challenge when you open your wardrobe. What does casual really mean when you must be prepared for an impromptu neighbourhood portrait, an unscheduled garden tour, and perhaps even an unexpected visit from an extraterrestrial? Every clothing choice is a risk, a balance between looking stylish, being comfortable, and the question of, will this survive the grape juice accident at 3 p.m? In the world of the 1950s homemaker, getting dressed is not just about choosing something clean and comfortable. It is a daily high-stakes fashion show, judged by destiny, chance, and the possibility of Mrs. Miller arriving with her instant camera. The expectation is immense. Before your first coffee of the day, your outfit must manage the delicate equilibrium of propriety, current style, and the distinct chance that you will be required to crawl under the furniture to retrieve a small toy car by the time lunch arrives. You begin with the essentials: the girdle, naturally, which guarantees instant shaping and future regret about that second slice of pie. Then you look over your options: crisp cotton dresses with cheerful floral patterns, perfect collars, and pleats that demand a peaceful agreement with your iron. You have an outfit for every potential situation: the "I'm baking but might be seen by a neighbour" dress, the "just walking to the mailbox" dress, and the highly valued "if the PTA president shows up, I'm ready" emergency suit. And one must not overlook the apron, which serves as both protection and fashion statement, a printed fabric charm against all possible cooking or social failures. The act of dressing is more than simple appearance, it is strategic planning. Is today likely to involve heavy cleaning? Opt for darker colours to hide dust and inevitable sticky handprints? Will you need to go out to the butcher shop or the bakery? Select an appearance that says organised but not overly formal. Everything is starched and accessorised, but with enough give to allow you to handle a whole turkey or a demanding toddler. On days when the weather is entirely unpredictable, you put on layers like a stylish onion, a sweater, a scarf, practical shoes, and perhaps a small pin for good fortune. Accessories are mandatory. Pearls, whether real or fake, give you immediate credibility and create the impression that you have everything fully organised. Gloves? Absolutely. Gloves are necessary for church outings, running errands, or the occasional afternoon tea party. Hats, worn just right, can elevate a simple dress into a cheerful declaration. Even your handbag is selected with a purpose. It must be large enough to hold a compact mirror, lipstick, emergency discount vouchers, and a minimum of 2 clean tissues. One for you, one for any child or grown-up having a slight emotional breakdown. But, as is always the case, life disrupts your plans. The dog jumps up at you with dirty paws. The youngest child launches grape juice at 3 o'clock exactly, a cherished family tradition. You drop a small bit of raw egg on your skirt while cooking breakfast, and at least one button invariably pops off your shirt by the middle of the afternoon. The ultimate test is not how perfect you look when you leave your bedroom, but how skillfully you handle fashion crises on the fly. Safety pins are your confidential weapon. An extra scarf can conceal a multitude of sins, and if all else fails, you adopt the relaxed attitude of a Parisian. This old thing? Just something I happen to put on. Fashion in the 1950s is about survival, it is camouflage, and it is a type of slow, ongoing performance art. There exists a distinct fashion hierarchy among the neighbourhood women, a quiet but powerful ranking system. You observe who consistently wears perfectly matching ensembles, whose petticoats are puffed up to maximum volume, and who, shockingly, dares to go without stockings on a hot summer afternoon. The risks are substantial. A wrong choice in prints or skirt length, and you risk being the focus of polite but persistent whispered conversations for a week. Yet despite all the pressure, there is a sense of accomplishment in the daily transformation. When you see your reflection, hair neat, lipstick fresh, skirt smooth, you stand a little taller, secure in the knowledge that you are ready for whatever the day, or Mrs. Miller, or the aliens decides to throw your way. You are a true survivor, armed with laundry starch, hairpins, and sheer determination. Because ultimately, fashion is not just about looking presentable. It is about being fully prepared for absolutely anything, one thoughtfully chosen outfit at a time. And so we arrive at the close of a single day in the life of a 1950s homemaker. You have successfully navigated the never-ending laundry, the unexpected casserole disasters, the high-pressure negotiations of the PTA, and the constant threat of dust gathering behind the television set. You have kept smiling through school pickups, charmed your way through every sales demonstration, and managed to maintain your composure while everyone around you was stressing over minor things like a chipped teacup. It is easy, from the comfort of your clean sheets and contemporary mattress, to look back now and laugh at the strange customs, the relentless expectations, and the endless parade of dishes topped with ingredients no one should ever willingly combine. But there is a genuine inner strength here too, a kind of quiet bravery in making the challenging look simple, in finding personal satisfaction in a sparkling clean counter, or humour in a toddler who ate craft glue. These women fostered community through shared recipes and built meaningful connections out of moments of crisis. They created places of safety out of pure chaos and wore restrictive undergarments with the determined optimism of people who genuinely believed tomorrow's gelatin mould would actually hold its shape. So tonight, as you settle into your bed, perhaps with a comforting blanket instead of a stiffly starched sheet and the quiet sound of a fan instead of a loud group of children, take a moment to reflect on how much things have changed. There is no impending casserole emergency waiting for you. No unexpected neighbours will appear at the door, and there is absolutely no need to iron anything unless you truly desire to. Perhaps whisper a small thank you to the generations of women before, whose constant battles with flooring and social requirements paved the way for our automatic dishwashers, quick microwave meals, and the simple freedom to just sit down and relax. Because history is not solely defined by hardship and challenges, it is also about enduring and sometimes truly flourishing through it all. With a sense of humour, a little bit of common sense, and a mountain of soft mashed potatoes. The story of the 1950s homemaker is more than a simple account of household tasks and food. It is enduring evidence that people are resilient, hopeful, and a little bit quirky in every generation. Now, let your thoughts quiet, let your body relax into the mattress, and grant yourself permission to finally rest. Tomorrow, the world will still be there, but for now, you have truly earned your sleep. Good night.